This is the Patriots Prayer Podcast. It's a tremendous show, one of the greatest shows in the history of the world.
This is Bryson Gray, and you are watching the Patriots Prayer.
Soon on the Patriots Prayer Network. Thank you all.
America's falling, they all say. Gather the faithful now and pray. The Patriots Prayer. The Patriots Prayer. All the wicks are trimmed, oil is filled to the brim. I haven't changed yet somehow. I'm the radical now. America's falling, they all say. Gather the faithful now and pray. The Patriots Prayer.
There it is. So here we are, folks. A lot of people tagged me, messaged me about this particular episode. And guys, we have with us somebody today, Judyth Vary Baker, who is very, very close to Lee Harvey Oswald and has a perspective on this particular incident that most of us don't, because she was intimately involved with Lee Harvey Oswald. She knew him. As a matter of fact, my understanding is that she was actually speaking with him only 36 hours before that bullet took our president's life. And so we are going to unpack this in slow form. Get ready, because this is not going to be, I assume, an hour-long podcast. This is going to be one where there are a million details and a million rabbit holes that we can go down. And Judyth is going to take us through each one of those in detail. So we know Kash Patel right now, being placed in the position that he's in, has reignited this fervor for the people that want the truth about the JFK assassination. And it's about time the American people understand exactly what happened, and it shouldn't have taken this long. But we will do the best that we can to fill in some of those gaps and some of those details and dismiss some of the rumors that we've all heard along the way. And with that, let's go ahead and bring up Judyth Vary Baker. Judyth.
Hi. Good to see you.
Good to see you as soon as I can see you. There it is. There it is. So, as I stated, there's a lot that people think they know. But it's a lot different than, I assume, than what reality versus what we think we know. There's probably a large chasm between the two. We've heard the CIA, we've heard the mafia.
CIA and FBI created the chasm.
Yeah, there's just a lot of people have, through various accounts, been blamed for this. And there was even a movie put out by Joe Bonanno. I think you and I spoke about that yesterday briefly, where he did a tell-all deal before he was on his deathbed, and his son put out a movie called The Bonanno Story. I remember watching it with my father-in-law, and it was an amazing movie. But shortly after Bill Bonanno, his son, put that movie out, they put the original version of it disappeared, and there's a version of it out there, but not the version that was originally out there. And I've always wondered if I could get those original versions, because in those there were a lot of details, and in between the movie it was showing Joe Bonanno on his deathbed explaining each portion of this along the way. And as we know now, he's long since passed. And we're very glad to have people that were so close to this incident, like yourself, around to tell us from firsthand experience exactly what took place. So the floor is yours. The floor is yours. Tell people who you are and how you know Lee Harvey Oswald. And I'll leave it to you.
Well, I'd like to say about E. Howard Hunt, who was St. John Hunt's father, who was involved with Watergate, that he made a deathbed confession that's important because he mentioned that the name of the op to kill Kennedy was called The Big Event. Interestingly enough, in the History Channel documentary they did on me, you'll see that I mentioned that Lee said the big event was coming. And he knew the name of the op. That's how close he was to the assassination rings. People need to know that he risked his life. And of course, in the end, they got him for it. Lee and I began speaking 37 and a half hours before the assassination, our last conversation. It was dreadful. It was horrendous because he told me he wasn't going to get out alive. He said, I believe I saved Kennedy's life 3 weeks earlier, 3 weeks ago.
Now, that's one that we haven't heard. Before I get into that and ask you about that, can you reveal some details of this conversation more so than what you have? Can you walk us through that?
Of course I can. By now, we recognize that powers greater than our own were manifesting themselves. Lee told me, to extend that conversation, he told me he was going to die, which is really horrible. And if he ran, they would get him anyway, and they would kill all of us if he ran. If he betrayed the CIA, well, he didn't mention it directly that way, but he said there are things I can't even say to defend myself, or people I know, who are involved trying to save the president, they will die as well. So all he could say was that he was a patsy. They knew he wouldn't betray the others. He had joined an abort team. Now, when I told Jim Mars, who was one of the foremost investigators, he's dead now, but he actually wrote the afterword for my book, Me and Lee, after plenty of examining me and, vetting me and everything. It was wonderful. I'd like to add one thing at this point before we go any further, and that is I tried working with lots of researchers. Many of them believe me and all that. Many were afraid to endorse me because they would get attacked. That did happen. The bad guys will say, well, come on, where are her witnesses? And they'll say, and by the way, I've never read her book. I'm not going to lower myself to read her book. And this is kind of hilarious because the book is filled with my witnesses and with evidence. And those evidence files were built upon the fact that at the time we were working on a biological weapon, which I'll get into in more detail. We thought we were trying to take out Fidel Castro and save the world from World War III. That was the line in Song and Dance.
Oh, it looks like we're having some technical difficulty, guys. Give it a second and see if it recovers here. I may have to message her to get her to rejoin the link.
Any this often people are going to be used to this.
It's okay. Just pop out and pop back in as soon as you're able.
Yeah.
And I'll continue.
Very sorry about it.
Nope. You're okay. You're okay. So just hop back in as soon as you're able. Thank you. So technical difficulties on Judyth's end, and but while she's getting all that sorted out, there are, like I said, there are so many rabbit holes to go down with this, and Judyth is very, very knowledgeable as to what took place, and she referenced her book Me and Lee. Like I said, 36 hours prior to that fateful day, she was actually on the phone with Lee Harvey Oswald, and she had a relationship with Lee Harvey Oswald. And as we all know, and it's probably not even contested at this point, Lee Harvey Oswald was a patsy. And so many sharpshooters, military sharpshooters throughout, history, from the time of that, a day in Dealey Plaza in 69 till now, have tried to recreate that shot. And every one of them came back with the same answer. It was an impossible shot to make. 6 shots through a bolt action rifle in 6 seconds while still aiming is 100% impossible by any human being on the face of this earth. And let's also not forget that the film, which we will get into even further with Judyth when she's back on, shows JFK's head back like this. So the shot that they try to tell you came from behind him, it's obvious to anybody with 2 eyes that he was shot from the front. And then there's the magic bullet. The bullet without a scratch or a scar on it that went through the car engine and through the passenger in the front driver's seat, was an elected official at the time. They called that the magic bullet. There were so many things that most people and anyone with common sense would have questioned, including the loyalty of the Vice President of the United States at that time, LBJ. We have some testimony here from his mistress at the time who said, and you'll hear it out of her own mouth, that LBJ wanted JFK dead. So there were a lot of players involved, and I don't think that it lays squarely at the foot of any particular one of them. A lot of people believe they acted in concert. Some people believe mafia. Some people believe CIA. Some people believe foreign powers. There are a lot of theories, but we're going to dispel a lot of those theories today. And Judyth is definitely going to be instrumental in us doing that. While we're waiting for Judyth to come back on, this is one of the I'm going to play a clip, and this is one of the very last speeches given by John Kennedy before he passed away. And you can see that in this speech, he was saying things that the deep state, yes, the deep state, even as far back as then, was already operating, and he knew it. And you can hear it very well in this speech. Take a listen.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. We decided.
What a statement to make. What a statement to make. Fighting the deep state as far back as then. It very little, I mean, I take that and I will get right back to what you were saying, but when he said that there's very little, value in continuing our society if our traditions and values don't survive with it. And we're fighting that today.
That's right.
They're trying to change the bedrock right underneath of our feet and strip our values and still call it American. And that's what we're fighting against. But I'm sorry. So we were talking about the conversation.
I apologize that these breaks happen. No matter what server I use or search engine, they crashed like this. It's not my computer either. I can be on somebody else's computer. It just happens. I apologize for it.
It's okay. We'll get through it.
Yeah, we'll make it no matter what. Keep
Okay,
coming
so
back.
we were on the conversation 36, 37 hours before
Yeah.
you're talking to Lee Harvey Oswald. And how did that conversation go?
Well, there's been a lot of discussion about the abort team. We know that Tosh Plumley, who has testified before Congress and was a CIA pilot and so on, right up to recently, actually, we know that he said that he was fooled because the people he brought in, most of them weren't in the usual abort team. They were actually there to help kill Kennedy. So, I mean, there was a lot of infiltration going on both ways. Like they had infiltrated, Lee had the assassination ring. And he told me, I'm not a, world-class shooter. Why do they want me to help them shoot? They said it was because he was in the building and that was the right building to shoot from and all that. And don't worry, they'd make sure he got away, all this kind of thing. So, I mean, we talked for over an hour and a half. He asked me to have babies for him. It was even though I was an atheist and he called himself a reluctant atheist, he asked us to say the Lord's Prayer. We said the Lord's Prayer together. And Lee said, it's a very old cry to God. Maybe he heard it. That's what he said. And other things I'll never forget. And I made sure I did not forget them because I knew the world would forget. This man cut off, barely 24 years old, so wise already, knew so much. He had even read Shakespeare's, all his comedies and tragedies. Can you imagine? I mean, who does that today? Not in college. In fact, he knew by July that he was in trouble with the CIA because they didn't, this is July 63, because they didn't said, no, we don't want you to go to college. He knew that to get advanced in CIA, you had to go to college. So he knew that he would be ripe to be abused, you see. And as early as July 63, he was aware that if they're not going to invest in him, that he could be disposable. He was, and so he had many contacts the CIA he trusted. But one of them he didn't trust was his handler, who was David Atlee Phillips. And he didn't know the name. Phillips used about 50 different monikers, the CIA guy who ended up being in charge of all of the subversive information that's going on through Central South America, Mexico, and so on. In charge of everything. And that was reason for him. And he had called himself Benton to Lee. Finally, when Lee was meeting with him with Vesiana, who was he was in another group, the 90. That group was working with Phillips as well, but Phillips told him that his name was Maurice Bishop. So he comes up and Lee is standing there with who he thinks is Benton. And he said, hola, Senor Bishop. So now Lee realizes he had 3 names there. And of course, none of them were correct. But Lee then looked up flight timetables when he was in Mexico, because he found out his handler left 6 days earlier when he was supposed to meet him in Mexico City. And there weren't that many flights that were going to Texas at that 6 days. So he was able to pinpoint that his handler left and arrived at Fort Worth. And because he knew Fort Worth very well, he had been there as a teenager, lived there, and he was currently living near Fort Worth over in, at that time, in Oak Cliff, in Dallas. He was able to recognize, he said, it had to be David Phillips. The Atlee, the middle name was not well known. When you see someone like James Files using, my handler's name was David Atlee Phillips. Look, I do not, most people don't introduce themselves. I am Judyth Vary Baker. I say I'm Judyth Baker. The Judyth Vary I put in there because there's so many Bakers. You don't usually introduce yourself with the middle name. How did he know Files know his middle name. So I've got some bones to pick with Mr. Files. Also, that he doesn't have witnesses, direct witnesses, who can verify that he was there. Whereas I do have witnesses. I collect them all the time. Sometimes it's on a very small thing, like having seen me and Lee together. Or it might be one that's accidentally in Warren Commission pages, or like in Garrison's investigation pages, like a deaf mute who couldn't speak and say what he saw, but he saw Lee Oswald meeting with someone all the time at about 5 o'clock. Well, and this is at, well, anyway, it was very near Riley Coffee Company, and we actually met there because we didn't want to get on the bus with all the Riley employees and be noticed. We wanted to sit together. So we'd wait. If we didn't have other things to do, we'd wait at what's called Charlie's Cafe. And that still exists. It's a different building now. But this deaf mute saw us there. He said, yeah, I saw him there all the time, you know. So we have little peripheral items like that. But then we have others, such as the most recent important witness who saw me and Lee together was Claudia Roddick, and her grandmother, her great grandmother, was Susie Hanover, who loved us, and that was my landlady. Okay, and so when Lee came to visit, he was there so often that little Claudia, who was going on 10, you know, she thought he lived there, you know, so she's been on 2 conferences to wide audiences saying exactly that. I saw him there so often, I thought he lived there. So, you know, with me, you know, because my
Right.
wasn't there very often. So that's just an example. So I have witnesses, I have lots of supporting evidence, and I kept evidence that wasn't for Lee. Originally, it's because we thought we were working to take out Fidel Castro, and we'd be considered heroes for stopping World War III. It was only 6 months after the Cuban Missile Crisis. So
Yeah.
if you know, I was just 19 years old when I met Lee. He was 23. And we were totally suited for each other. It was really remarkable. Not the stupid idiots they try to make him out to be, by no means. And I hope I will be able to show that to you as we continue this conversation.
Okay. So you extremely close with him, and so when you look at, you know, I'm sure you've heard all of the theories different people have had over the years, and you may have watched a few documentaries here and there. How close would you consider that a lot of people had came to the truth, and what is the biggest lie that you think most people believe about the assassination?
The problem is that most people realize today that Lee Oswald was a patsy, but they fall for this claim that he was unwitting, that he was stupid, that he didn't know what was happening, and that he got trapped. And poor Lee, and so they don't understand the heroic aspect of the fact that he knew what was going to happen to him, that he knew he was in trouble, as he told me that final conversation after I believe I saved Kennedy's life 3 weeks ago. He said, now I'm under suspicion. He said, that's not good. I don't think I'm going to get out of this alive. And it was obvious to him that he could be easily made a patsy. So he understood that, but he held his ground because he had joined this abort team. This abort team, which Jim Mars, when I told him about this in late 1999, I spoke out at that time. It was a very difficult decision, I might add. I had promised Lee I would tell his little girls that he was a good guy. That's all they asked me to do. Well, you can't really do that without explaining who you are. Mm-hmm. I put it off. And then I had children, little kids. I didn't want them to get hurt. So I had, the day after my last child left home, went on her honeymoon, which was December 26, 1998. The next day I took out the film JFK and watched it for the first time. And I was shocked at how much Garrison knew, but couldn't put his finger on what was really going on. And I knew I had to do something. I had made a promise to Lee that I'd tell his little girls, and now they were all grown up. And I was 60 years old. I waited so long. I kept hoping that the truth would come out because it was everywhere. So many people knew so many things, but they were murdered one by one, or they were enjoined to be silent, like my friend David, Dennis David, David was his last name, Dennis his first name. And he was at Bethesda and saw some of the autopsy. Hey, we grew up almost together in Niles, Michigan, and knew him from childhood. And God puts these people in their right places. So he was able to tell me, you know, when they took the samples of Lee's brain and things, and also took bullet fragments from him that were from Kennedy that were put in his hands to hand over because he was the chief person who was controlling everything. He said that when they took all these samples from the autopsy, that from the brain, so you could see where the path of the bullets went and everything like that. Whatever samples they took, he said he had to carry them off. He said they had a number, but they had no name attached. And with thousands and thousands of numbers of samples, it is completely lost all the information. And then, of course, as you know, Kennedy's brain itself has gone missing.
Yeah,
So
gone missing.
that. And by the way, I'd like to dispel one of the rumors that went around because CIA and FBI just love to create rumors so that you cannot discern the truth because the truth itself is rather unusual. It had
It's usually intertwined in their rumor in some way.
That's right.
But I'll call it malinformation because it has so many elements of truth, but it's redirected in such a way as to throw you off.
Right. You know, like some of my critics, as I began this with, will say, she's not telling the truth. I know the truth, or something like that. And say, have you read her book? I wouldn't lower myself to read her book. You know, and there's all the evidence files and everything in it. I have had one experience I think worth talking about right now, and that is that some of my evidence files, when they went online, they altered them. They literally took the J's off of the initial J that was on these time cards. I could go into explanation about that. The National Archives was so upset about that they actually called me when they got some new stuff about Jack Ruby. Now, Jack Ruby is the one who so-called nightclub owner, and that's all they say. He was half owner.
He was a wannabe gangster. Like he tried to associate himself with the mafia tie. This is what you hear when you watch these things. Is that
it was more than wannabe. Okay, he was a gangster. He was sent from Giancana's Chicago mob after killing somebody to out of Chicago to Dallas. Being a Jew is the only thing that stopped him from being a made man that way.
Right. His last name was what? Rubenstein, and they shortened it to Ruben.
It was originally, yes. He was also known as Sparky Rubenstein, and that fooled me because he was introduced to me, as Sparky. And I didn't know that Sparky and Jack Ruby were the same people. When they pull their little joke on me, they didn't mention later that what his real name was. It just got lost.
So you interacted with Jack Ruby as well. So did Lee Harvey Oswald prior to this whole thing know Jack Ruby? They spoke, or this was after? I think we're back to the technical difficulties, so she'll rejoin. But folks, you have to listen between the lines. I think what she was just saying there, and I'm going to get more in depth about that, was that Jack Ruby. Yes, Judith. Yeah, you're good. I expect it's going to happen. Just jump back on. You're good.
Okay, sorry.
No, it's okay. I expect it to happen. It's okay.
All right, thank you.
Yep, that's it. So yeah, this is typical, especially when you're talking about things like this. It's funny, guys. I being a security expert, in the technical field for as long as I was, I noticed well over a year ago, I started having problems whenever I would go live. So I got a VPN and I started looking at the addresses that would hit the live stream when I went live and how many of them just started attacking me. I would find that I would lose connection or my video would slow down or pixelate or whatever, but I was able to capture a lot of that on screen. There were addresses hitting me from all over the world, but only when I went live. It's wild. But I'm sure she'll be back in a second. And but like I said, the revelation that she was just talking about, where Jack Ruby, and I'm going to ask her about this as soon as she gets back in. I never heard that Jack Ruby knew Lee Harvey Oswald prior to what took place. What I know of Ruby is that he hung around with gangsters. He wanted to be associated with gangsters. And essentially, he would try to do whatever he could possibly do in order to please them, to be one of them. But I never heard that he himself actually was one. He just liked to associate himself with one. And he knew them and he hung around them. But I'll defer to her knowledge. I just can go off of what we've been told all these years and from all the investigations and stuff that has been put out. But guys, you got to remember, we're talking about mainstream media. We're talking about mainstream news and the things that they let filter out into the public sphere. They believe me. If they went to the links that they went to hide the JFK files and classify them and not let them go, and presidents in the past have said, we're not going to open them for 75 years. I mean, why do all that and cover up an assassination of the president of the free world, the leader of the free world? Why would you need to do that? Who are you protecting? At that point, you had to ask yourself, do they still work for us? Has our government been subverted? Have there been people that have infiltrated our government to the point where they think they know what's best for us and that we're not worthy to know what they're doing and why they're doing it because we just wouldn't understand. We're not smart enough to get it, right? And that's what I think we're dealing with today. And today, even more so. But maybe not. Here's the thing, because there are two arguments to be made for that. We have more information today than they had back then, and more access to it. So it may have been a lot easier to get over back then. Here's Judyth.
Sorry.
You're good. You're good. So when you left off, we were talking about Jack Ruby. And so did Jack and Lee know each other, or did you?
Yes, Jack Ruby was sent to Dallas. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Jack Ruby was sent to Dallas after a murder that occurred during a union problem with garbage collectors right in Chicago. And he joined up with Joe Civello, who was running everything at that time for Giancana in Dallas. But Carlos Marcello took over, and Civello had the choice of either, let's say it this way, a deal he couldn't resist or be removed. So he went along and joined Marcello's group. And of course, we're talking about Jack Ruby was almost like a partner, but Civello was running everything. So Jack Ruby's Carousel Club, the nightclub owner, the half owner of that was Joe Civello. So, I mean, he was absolutely a mobster. And he had strong connections to New Orleans. But because of Marcello had close connections with, his name was Charles Dutz Moret. He was a prize fighter at one point, a boxer. And he worked very hard for Marcello and cleared up the docks so everybody obeyed Marcello or got beat up. And he got a little too old for that, and so Marcello loved the man and made him, a bookie with easy job, and gave him plenty of affection as well. He really liked him a lot. Well, that was Lee Oswald's uncle. His wife was Lillian. Her former name was Clavier, and that was the same as his mother, who was Marguerite Oswald, Clavier Oswald. So Marguerite and Lillian were sisters. So Lee was one of these useful people for the CIA who served as a bridge between the CIA and the mafia at that time to get rid of Castro. So he was very useful that way. So Lee had friends in the mob, and he had friends, of course, in the CIA. And he had always wanted, it's a long story about how he got involved. And we'll go wherever you want. But the point is that Jack Ruby knew him because Marcello would hold these parties, like out at, they had an island where they held parties, and also in Dallas, and also, of course, mainly in New Orleans. And Jack Ruby was all the time going between New Orleans and Dallas, especially to pick up girls, that strippers, and the best ones he slept with, as they told me themselves. And if they were good enough, he took them up to to Las Vegas. So they were all anxious to please him. And Jada was one of those. She was a stripper that was really famous at the 500 Club in New Orleans. And actually, Jack Ruby went down there to, get her involved and all that. She did not want to go. She was having an affair at that time with her manager in New Orleans. So he was forcing her. And at any rate, I found out a lot at that time from other strippers, one of them who worked with her. How I got involved with the strippers is another story. And it's because I came 2.5 weeks early to New Orleans. I thought I'd be wined and dined by my doctors who had asked me to come there and work. They were out of town because I came early, but I'll start a conversation a little later about that. But the fact of the matter is, Jack Ruby had close connections in New Orleans and in Dallas, and Lee had lived in both cities at any given time. When Lee actually moved with his mother to Fort Worth, Dutz Verrett literally asked Carlos, said, "Please take good care of my boy Lee." So somebody, I could go into more details, but we have plenty of information showing how close the Moretts were, especially Uncle Dutz, to Lee, and also, again, to the mafia.
So how many, just your personal knowledge, how many people today, maybe still in power or just still alive, were, to your knowledge, involved in what took place? And why do you think that they, covered up? Why 75 years? 75 years? Why did they say we're not going to open these files for 75 years? That never made sense to me. But first, how many people?
Because these people have to be dead first, so they can't be imprisoned and they can't be arrested, incarcerated. By the way, most of them are dead now. All the ones that are important are dead now.
Like who? Can you share some of that? Like who?
Well, let's start with Lyndon Johnson himself. How about that for a starter? Now, what about Lyndon? I'm going to tell you a little story for anybody who thinks that Lyndon Johnson was not corrupt. But there was a scandal with Bobby Baker doing bribes and everything that they were actually going to report on. They even had, I think it was like Time magazine or whatever, maybe Look magazine. But anyway, they had a big story they're going to put out about Lyndon Johnson's corruption with Bobby Baker. And that got scratched when he became president, okay? But let's look a little deeper. Let me explain something that was under the radar nobody knew about, but we have evidence for it. It's in one of my books, Kennedy and Oswald, The Big Picture, I believe. But at any rate, think about this. You have big meat packing companies in Central and South America, especially like Argentina. Think about corned beef, those cans of corned beef. Well, when they had stuff that was rotten that they couldn't, can like that, they sent it to Haiti. In Haiti, basically it was soaked in chlorine, then squished out, and then salt water was put in it to squish out some more. Then lots of salt was added, and then it was sold to the American public through Bobby Baker and Lyndon Johnson. They got 2 to 3 cents a pound for it, rotten meat that they processed that way. There were lots of things that Johnson was involved in. When Kennedy lay dying at Parkland Hospital, Lyndon Johnson made 2 important phone calls. One
From
of
the
them,
tarmac, right?
Huh?
If I'm not from the tarmac, he never left the tarmac that day until
no, he actually went into the hospital. He went inside and made phone calls. I'll tell you the whole story because it's really interesting, I think. And understand that people have approached me who were afraid to speak out and say, "Oh, after I'm dead, you can, say who I am." Well, that doesn't work, But at any rate, I can tell you that I've double checked on a lot of this. So here, what we're looking at, and we have doctors also who understood this. We have Lyndon Johnson calls, to find out if he can get deathbed confession from Lee Oswald. And he's talking to an important doctor who he said, well, actually, the patient is holding his own. Well, when you hear the word deathbed confession, you realize that those doctors know they're not supposed to save him. Think about it. All right. So, at any rate, and were they prejudiced against Lee Oswald when he was brought in there bleeding to death? And every moment counts when you're bleeding to death like that. They rolled him into trauma room 1. All right. Well, that's where Kennedy was died from his wounds. When they realized that, they stopped, pulled him out again, and wheeled him into trauma room 2, which takes a couple of minutes. Those couple of minutes were vital to saving his life. So don't tell me that they were not prejudiced. We also knew they were prejudiced because he came in an ambulance that was slow because of the crowds, slow to make it to Parkland Hospital through all the crowds. And people are lined up when they heard that Lee had been shot. I mean, it just filled up. But the point is when that ambulance arrived at Parkland Hospital, you look at the receipt. He was, even though they had an oxygen tank, and I found photos showing the oxygen tank in that ambulance. They never gave Lee any oxygen, just to show you about prejudice there. So holding his own against all of those odds, he didn't have a chance. At any rate, let's go back to where we're talking about Lyndon Johnson. Lyndon Johnson's other important call was made to his stockbroker. And this is while Kennedy was just before he was pronounced dead. This call is made to tell his stockbroker to have Ladybirds, all the stock in Halliburton, helicopters, sell it right away. And of course, they sold it to a buddy who would hold on to it until after he was not president anymore. All right. That kind of thing going. We had that going on all the time now. All right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So think of all the leaders, the rhinos and all that, how much money they're making because their husbands or wives, they're,
Exactly.
Like Pelosi's husband has to be the greatest stockbroker ever lived. Right.
Yeah, Hillary Clinton holds the world record for the amount of money made in commodities in one day. Imagine that.
Oh, that's right. They knew what was coming down the pike. They knew. So anyway, so he says, his words, sell that damned Halliburton stock now. Of course, they would later make millions upon millions, equating to billions today in helicopters that were made for the Vietnam War, which actually Lyndon Johnson would start immediately, rescinding an order from Kennedy to bring home troops by Christmas. And all that got changed. By the way, some of that was changed before Kennedy was even dead. The timing is a little off. You have a lot of the committee that was supposed to be in charge of looking into the Vietnam War. You can look all that up with there are some books out there that like L. Fletcher Prouty's book, The Secret Team, where you'll learn that even before Kennedy was dead, they had changed his rule that, to not bring home these soldiers, advisors actually at the time. So they just jumped the gun a little bit. So they knew he was going to die. And this is most of his cabinet. Can you imagine? So we call it a cabal. It is not just one person involved or two, but a consortium. And you look at today and you can see the same kind of consortium with the media, with all kinds of people, high and low, working together to destroy Trump. This is from the Steele document on.
All the way down. Yeah, you got to have people in every facet of government, FBI, CIA, media, all working in concert with one another.
And why would they do that? Here's a key. The way they had two reasons for doing that. If any of them pointed to any other agency, they could point right back, say you were involved as well. The other is that not any of them could dare say anything, pointing to anybody else or anything, because of course all the others say you're lying. So that there's no way. It was rock solid. Nobody.
Or destruction.
But the media is the worst, right from the beginning. And I showed some of these recently in a recent interview, some headlines. One of the headlines from one of the newspapers were all in on it. They all had the same. Right away, they said assassin, even though there are multiple bullets, sounds of bullets going off. And we know that at least from two different directions, because we had all kinds of people saying grassy knoll, more.
Oh, he was getting to the good stuff. So she'll jump right back in. But while she is doing that, I'll go ahead and I'm going to take a break for our sponsors, guys, and we will be right back after these messages. As soon as I can find these messages. There we go.
America faces challenges like never before. Economic uncertainty, social unrest, debt implosion. The foundations of our freedom are under attack. To restore strength, prosperity, and the American way of life, Trump must win.
I plan to ensure that the United States will be the crypto capital of the planet and the Bitcoin superpower of the world.
Introducing the Trump token, blending the deflationary model of Bitcoin with the technological advancement of Solana. It's more than just a cryptocurrency. It's America's future medium of exchange. The Trump token pledges to donate 50% of proceeds, up to $50 million, to Trump's 2024 re-election campaign. Join the movement. Stand with Trump. Secure your future at thetrumptoken.com.
Born in the coastal plains of South Texas, Smoking Gun Coffee is founded by combat veterans that know exactly what a cup of coffee needs to taste like. Run by father and son, each coffee bean is perfected, roasted at 500 degrees, and cooled with a Gulf Coast breeze. Smoking Gun Coffee hand makes and bags each ounce of coffee for maximum customer satisfaction. With every purchase, 10% goes back to organizations that help veterans and local communities. That's Texas made, one bag at a time. To find out more, go to www.smokingguncoffee.com.
Guys, we love Smoking Gun Coffee. And if you go to Smoking Gun Coffee and you go up to the coffee club, you can get your Patriot Prayer coffee club there. And you get the dark or medium roast there at smokingguncoffee.com. $39, folks, and you don't even have to worry about it. They'll just ship you out 4 bags every month, and you don't have to worry about remembering to go buy. It just shows up at your doorstep. So definitely go check those guys out. We love them, and they've been with us since day one. Judyth has returned, so let's bring her back up. I'm very interested because you left right in the middle of the height of what was getting ready to happen. So please continue.
All right. Well, basically, what we're looking at consort. You can hear me, right? Okay. This consortium actually has continued to exist for years. I mean, even Kissinger was involved. I mean, you name them, they were there. And one of the reasons I survived is it's fortuitous that I was kicked out of what I was involved in at the time. The others were murdered. I mean, one by one. And they were my friends. But at any rate,
Now, I want people to understand that the things that Judyth is talking about, we may just see as a TV show. We may see as a documentary or a thing that we're completely disconnected from, but interested in. To her, this is personal. So just be aware of that, because she's very, she was connected to Lee Harvey Oswald. She's very connected to these folks that she's talking about. So I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I start shaking sometimes. I can't help. It's kind of visceral. It's just automatic. I can't help it. But people will say, well, how can you feel that way after all these years? It's maybe post-traumatic stress syndrome or something. But I get flashbacks and everything. I still do. So it can be difficult. But at any rate, it needs to be talked about. So it has to be. And God's saved my life. But some of the things that helped save me is that I was in the newspaper so much, and I'm going to start talking about that pretty soon. I was in the paper so much that it would look really bad if something bad happened to me after going to New Orleans. They say, what happened to her in New Orleans? We've got all these, it went all over the whole United States and even overseas that I was trying to cure cancer. And I was, when I started that, I was only 15. And I was, by the time I was 18, I had given cancer to mice, germ-free mice, in only 7 days. And that would not be duplicated for 4 more years when Dr. James T. Grace used the same methodology. And I have the papers on that. Everything I tell you, I have papers and documents that people have seen. One of the things that I did wrong is that I tried to work with researchers and certain witnesses. Some of these witnesses were lying. Of course, I found out they were making hay. And then others like Bugliosi and, we have others that are still alive today that wrote materials to make money. You'll see a tiny stack of Oswald Did It books, and those went everywhere, and they made bestsellers. Then you've got about 1,000 books that Lee Oswald didn't do it. And of course, like my hard copy of Me and Lee was the first book. I've updated that with Lee Harvey Oswald and Me, a hardcover that can go to libraries, and it's limited edition. But soon, next year, will come out in paperback for everybody with all the updates from the 2010. The reason I'm mentioning this is that way back then, when I tried to get that out, can you imagine? I was forced by that time to live overseas because the History Channel made a documentary showing me as involved, with creating a biological weapon and all that, but all of the things I'm telling you right now. And it was a marvelous documentary, but it was supposed to be shown for 9 years and update with a second documentary on the 50th. Well, you used to see the Lyndon Johnson family. They got all over it. We had, there were 3 episodes altogether that were implicating Lyndon Johnson and others. But there's a famous, maybe you can come up with that photo. It's called The Wink. And you'll see that it's during when on Air Force One, and you see Lyndon Johnson is winking at, if you look, you'll see who it is. You have, his name is Albert Thomas. The original reason that Kennedy went and agreed to go to Texas was for a farewell retirement dinner for Albert Thomas in Houston. And from there, they added Dallas and Fort Worth and so on, all right? And then Lyndon Johnson's ranch. Well, the wink is because that's where it started. And you have you see Lyndon Johnson brings out, he called her honey and little gal and so on. And that was Jackie Kennedy. He brings her out as a trophy. There, look at her. She's shell-shocked. And there is the wink, Albert Thomas. They're on Air Force One. It is baking hot. It's like 110 degrees in there because they had turned off the engines. They're waiting on the tarmac. Why aren't, if they didn't know who did it, of course he did, they'd be taken off right away. They wouldn't be sitting around there where Kennedy had been shot. Think about it. They wouldn't. They would be taking off. No, they wait a half an hour so that they can get the proper judge, a woman that is a friend of Lyndon Johnson's, to swear him in.
Yep.
Sarah.
That's the tarmac story that I remember, that he stayed there until he was sworn in as president. We were talking about the shots that day, and you said like there were 2 and different things. And Bonanno in that movie I was describing earlier said in his memoirs that it was an Argentinian man that they had in the sewer underneath the sidewalk and that had a line of sight.
Well, I'll tell you, the mafia itself didn't know everything. They went on rumors. Some of those rumors are planted and all that. We do know that we have updated information from Roscoe White's son, who spoke at a conference, an important conference last year. And he was called Mandarin. He's definitely CIA, Roscoe White. We've got enough evidence, in my opinion, that White at least is the one that shot through the windshield. That's from straight ahead. And by the way, they pulled the windshield out and redid it with shooting bullets through the other direction so that they could hide the fact that any shot came from the front. We have Richard Sharman, Charnin. You can see him online with all kinds of information showing how many actual witnesses said that they heard shots from the grassy knoll, not from the Texas School Book Depository, although many others said they did. But interestingly enough, we have people inside the book depository on the 5th floor, not the 6th floor, said they heard shots, not from above them, but from the grassy knoll, even though they said they heard shells falling down on their heads from the, it's very complicated how can you hear shells falling down on your head from the floor above you, but you didn't hear any shots. So they took that out and just talked about that. There are many inconsistencies, but I'm almost finished. The most important is that we have all these people saying that if you had any witnesses talking about the grassy knoll, that wouldn't fly. So they were all ignored. All of them were ignored. That like there were no shots at all fired from there, even though you have people that were falling to the ground, because the shots were flying past them right there at the grassy knoll. Now, to counter that, every year for now 10 years, I've been holding the JFK Remembrance Ceremony at the grassy knoll on the 22nd at the very hour. And we actually have, excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. I'm allergic to dust as the air conditioner just turned on. But the fact of the matter is that at the grassy knoll there, we had those shots were fired from that spot. And we have people who claim that like sewer shots and all that. Without going into too much detail, we definitely know that some shots couldn't have come from the grassy knoll. It has to be also from either sewer or what, like John B. Wells says, he saw a like an open manhole that is way up at the top. We also have others that we have all. It's like the true cross. You put all the fragments together, you have five or six crosses. Same for how many shooters. We have all kinds of people claiming. Right away, we can get rid of some of them. For example, if they say they know who brought in the Carcanos to shoot with, right away get rid of them because Carcanos were for sale on every street corner. I saw a whole barrel full of them with Lee in New Orleans. They were selling for $10 and $15 each. And, I looked at it and said, look, Lee, something like this. Oh, them, he said, that junk. And here they claiming that he actually owned one. So this amazed.
What about the driver, Judith?
Yes.
Many people, one of the theories is that after the president was shot and Jackie saw what happened, she tried to climb out of the back of the car like any normal person, get the hell away
No,
from it.
that's not what was going on.
But they say the driver turned around, and what people didn't know is that the driver had a gun.
No, that's another misnomer. Let me explain. The CIA just loves to have us argue over this so the truth doesn't get out. It's quite simple. About Greer, the driver, and you have Kellerman up in the front seat. These supposed to protect the president, but they don't have anybody literally protecting the president. We can go and look at some of that, like some of them were drinking at the cellar door the night before, by the way, which was partially run by Jack Ruby. So you have all kinds of intricacies going on. But let's look at this just for a minute, what was really going on. Jackie Kennedy, when the Zapruder film has been partially scrubbed, certain parts, I can explain how I can prove that.
Should we look at
blood going up? Yeah, you can see the blood going up. Okay, but it doesn't come down. Yeah, watch the blood. I'll show you. All right, we've got 25 seconds here, so. Here it comes. Now he is shot just as he goes behind that. Comes out. He's clutching his throat. Now watch. Dan Rather said he was thrown violently forward. You'll see it was violently backward. She climbs onto the hood. The hood looks shiny. Can you stop the film? No, I guess not. But where she's climbing there, she's not getting away. She is actually.
I can pause it at a certain area if you like.
Yeah, when she looks like she's crawling on, try to stop it there. Try to stop it there. Keep going. It's frame 313, 3:15 or so on. Then she starts climbing up immediately. You went past it already. It's all right. All right, stop it. She is not trying to get away. Notice we have Clint Hill is climbing up there. He's not climbing to stop her. He is responsible for her personal safety. Not one other Secret Service agent moved. In fact, they were told not to. But he was responsible for Jackie, so he is able to move. All right, and jumps on there. That's how slow the car was moving, by the way. For anybody who says that they actually have sped up the film. Jackie is reaching straight down for something. She's not trying to get any further forward, and it's not because of him. She actually grabs a piece. Now that you'll notice this trunk itself, it looks pretty clean. It really wasn't. It's been kind of scrubbed, and for good reason. When they get to Parkland Hospital, you'll see they come out with buckets to wash all the blood and brains and pieces of bone and everything else that was on the trunk of that car. They did that because they don't want anybody to think that the shots came from the front and blew the back of Kennedy's head out. They're going to try and say it went the other direction. And we have Dan Rather, the traitor, who claimed he said he saw the Zapruder film. And what he saw, he said, was Kennedy's head thrown violently forward, which was a lie, a total lie.
Rather, who was at the Bilderberg.
Yep. Yes, Dan Rather is still around today, and this man, I would love to confront him, because at one point, you will not find this anymore. He said, "I must have seen the film backwards" when he got caught, because they thought the film wouldn't come out for years and years. Everybody would forget, but he was out of breath. He said, "I just saw it. I saw the."
See, it's always at the height that these things happen, but she'll jump right back in, guys. Don't worry. I no doubt about that. But just on the issue of two things, both Dan Rather and LBJ. Let's talk about those for a second while she's gone. Dan Rather was in attendance at the Bilderberg meetings with the Clintons and other members of the press and media. When I say all the time, when I had that conversation backstage when we were in Atlanta, I was at the Trump rally. I was talking to MTG. I talked to many other, Burt Jones, a lot of people, Vance, for instance. And, my own personal thing with these guys is change Section 230 so that conservative creators like myself aren't targeted by Facebook and TikTok and everything else, because they discriminate against us. So I'm really big when I get in front of a politician or somebody like to bring that up. Change Section 230. Don't get rid of it, don't repeal it, but change it so that we have our First Amendment rights, especially on publicly traded companies. The other thing, so go after the media. If you're going to investigate anyone, guys, start at the media. They're the ones that pull the wool over everyone's eyes. They cause all the division. They tell the stories. They brainwash the people. They are the reason a lot of times for the riots that are in our streets and whatnot. They could diffuse a lot of that by telling the truth. If they told the truth about Trump, we wouldn't be in half of the position we're in today, but they work in cahoots with the intelligence communities, and they always have. Project Mockingbird that's a real thing. And many of us still today believe that it never ceased to exist as a program, and did. And, so there's just a lot there, and the media should be definitely investigated. So Judyth, you're good. You're back in. So go ahead and just pick up where you left off.
Okay. So Jackie Kennedy is not trying to escape the car. She's actually reaching for it has a little bit of bone. It has brain tissue and blood. She grabs this in her hand and holds it all the way to Parkland Hospital, where when she enters the room where they're operating on her husband, they're trying to save his life. She reaches out her hand and says, "Will this help?" That's what was going on. And the media is so evil and said she was trying to escape, that she was afraid. The other thing that people you'll hear also is that Kennedy yelled, "My God, I've been hit." Jackie Kennedy later said, my husband said not a single word when he was hit. Not a word, not one word. So you have the media making up all these things, and so many of them are not true. And of course, they've misapplied and misquoted me. You wouldn't believe what I've had to go through. I'm only living in the United States because I got trapped here. And I would love to tell you all about COVID and about gain of function and how it goes all the way back, exactly back to New Orleans, what we were working on. That's been traced now. There's no doubt about it, because we're working with SV40 monkey virus that you'll see is mentioned when we're talking about COVID vaccines and why they're so deadly, and one of the reasons why. But back to Kennedy. So we have many misrepresentations. For example, we have the press secretary saying Kennedy was shot right through the forehead, right the right-hand side. You'll see that the media has removed that, where it shows where it was shot from the front, and just said, and they just cut that out. Well, it didn't used to be that way, but now it's that way. So many things have been altered, including even backyard photos. I've seen recent reproductions of backyard photos of Lee Oswald with a gun and all this. There's such a story to tell. You ought to hear it. Would you like to hear something about the backyard photos?
Sure. This is something that's new to me, so I'm very interested.
All right. Well, the backyard photos, one of them was shown on the cover of Life magazine. Kind of hard to forget. I'm sure you can come up with that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So that if you look at that for a moment, you'll see the face on that is very interesting, because I knew Lee intimately. I can tell you, like, he had no implants. I can tell you where he had covered up some scars, like one that was behind his ear was pulled back. The skin was, so you couldn't see his mastectomy scar anymore. It was tucked under his ear by pulling that skin over that. Other things like that, because he literally was a spy. He really was. So if you can't show the picture, I'll just describe it. Okay, so there you go. You've got these several backyard photos. One of them, by the way, see that angle? We did something funny in 2019. We had a showing the angle up, what a 90-degree angle is and so on, and put the angle at which Lee Oswald was supposedly standing. And then we had someone, and of course you have to have the counterweight of the rifle. As we challenged people to stand the same way with the counterweight, so it'd be the same weight. Nobody could do it. This photograph was actually inserted into this backyard. Okay,
and I can tell that I'm just as you're saying that, I'm looking at the shadow of the sun hitting the stairs against the gate versus the angle of the shadow of him. And they're two different angles.
That's right. The shadow was apparently taken in the afternoon, and it even shines on the shoes. However, the head, it looks like they took this head when they were grilling him with a light over his head. And they superimposed that picture. And I'll tell you why I think that was done by the police, besides which we found a picture, a backyard photo with Roscoe White stuff after he died. We've got the picture. So we've got an extra backyard photo from Roscoe White in his stuff. We believe that is Roscoe White instead of Lee, because there's a bump on the arm. If you blew it up, you could see it. And also we have
right there. Yeah. I see it right there.
Well, it's so small, I don't know if others can see it, but there's a bump on the arm. The arms are too thick to be Lee's. I knew him completely. And they're just, now don't get me wrong, Lee was wiry and strong. He was no weakling, but the arms are just built too big to be Lee's. The other part is that the chin is not it. Apparently they pasted on the head above the chin line because they wanted that big bull neck to show up, and so what you have is if we hold on to that picture just a little longer, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about it.
I'm gonna grab a bigger.
Okay,
shot.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. So there are 3 pictures that we know of. There's 4. There are actually 5 out there, but 4. One of them is a cutout that the Dallas police had, and Gail Channa Willis will tell you that her own father photographed some of these, and the Dallas police themselves made a cutout showing the backyard. Okay, and where you could stick in a figure like this, but again, it was a bit sideways, wasn't it? So we have that shadow at the bottom, but
and
the shadow,
and the head is detached.
Look at the man's face. You have a square chin. Lee did not have a square chin like that. Lee had a slightly pointed chin with like a cute little cleft in it. Okay, and you don't see that on that chin. That's the wrong chin.
Can you see my mouse there on the screen? You can see how the shadow disappears and the sun is there, and then the head is detached.
So the head, you'll notice the shadows are going straight down. Apparently, they were grilling him under a light that was over his head, and then they took a photograph and they pasted that. Why do I say that? They showed a picture, not the negative, but they showed a completely developed photograph, black and white, to Lee Oswald himself, the evening of the 22nd. Now, what's important about that is that somebody else saw it too. His name was Michael Payne. Michael Payne's wife was Ruth Payne, that's where Marina Oswald and Lee's 2 kids stayed. His baby June and a little infant who was Rachel. And they were staying with Ruth Payne. And she was supposedly separated from Michael, but I could go into a lot of detail about the Paynes. You'll find it in the book is sold out now. It's called Kennedy and Oswald, The Big Picture, but it's going to be reissued next year, updated. But in there, you'll see what really was going on with the Paynes. It's a horrible, I'll put it this way, betrayal of Lee Oswald. They were CIA. There's no doubt about it. And if we have time, or maybe I come back and tell you more later about the cameras, I actually have copies of all the cameras. I saw Lee's cameras myself. If only we had time to go into everything, but I don't want to wander around too much. I just want to say about the backyard photos. Lee saw them and said, my head was pasted on there. That the rest of that is not me. And I'll prove it. Just give me time. I'll show you. Of course, they didn't give him time. They shot him. All right. They don't want him talking. But there's something else. Yes, that's the book. Unfortunately, it's sold out We didn't realize it would sell out, but because it had been thrown into production real quickly because
And as you can see, right, the chin is completely different in this picture. It is not. It's not a cleft chin. It's not squared off.
That's right.
Yeah, you can see it right here in this photo.
Oh yeah, it's a different chin completely. And that, by the way, that's his photo when he was at the USSR. His face would develop a little bit more, and it'd be even more prominent. The pointed chin. Of course, they don't care. We didn't have internet back then. Interestingly enough, one of the pictures that's in my Lee Harvey Oswald Me book, and it's also in Me and Lee, the earlier book, it shows a close-up. What they did is they made Lee have a smirk. It's called a famous smirk. Well, it didn't really exist. Lee had always had a kind of a smile around his face. He just had a natural little bit of a smile. It doesn't mean he was grinning or like what they, if you blew this up, and I show it in the book, you can see that Lee was actually frowning like that. And they actually added upward marks on both sides to make it look like he was smiling. That made him look like kind of a weird smirk, okay? It was completely photoshopped. But what happened is they actually dropped a tiny bit of whiteout on that photo. They let it go out because you try to fix that whiteout. And let me tell you, because I know how to do that black and white stuff myself. You tried to wipe it out and the whole thing would be ruined. So well, once I brought that up on the media, all of a sudden, all the pictures of Lee showing this smirk, all of a sudden the drop of whiteout disappears. You can't see it anymore, only in my book. Okay. So they will go online and alter things. They have even altered backyard photos. One was done in like 2010. And they erased some of the shadows that were causing problems, as late as that. They're still altering the photos that you see online. It's just dreadful. But we have originals.
You were talking earlier about LBJ.
Okay, I'm gonna let me finish one more thing on this because it's important, and then we'll go there. Please remind me. I appreciate it. No, so the other thing I want to say about these backyard photos is that he has a ring. Lee wore his wedding ring on his right hand, not his left hand. One of the photos shows a ring on the left hand. The next photo, we made a mistake, shows his ring on the right hand. This is in the series of these backyard photos that are supposed to have been taken one after the other, one after the other. And the same head is used, but they just tilt the head or they add a teeny bit of Photoshop to one of them. But it's the very same head. They paste it on. So you can put all the heads together. They all merge, but the bodies will be different positions. I mean, that's impossible. It never happens in nature, of course. But the other bad thing I want to tell you is that it was done with 620 black and white film with what's called the Imperial Reflex camera. Show me, if you will, how you take a picture with an ordinary camera. How do you do it? Show me.
You do it like this.
Right. And so they handed this camera to Marina and said you took the picture. Show us what you did. What'd she do? She put it up to her eyes, right? But the Imperial Reflex doesn't take pictures that way. You have to hold it at waist level. That's how primitive the darn thing was and how cheap. All right. She didn't know that. She had to claim that she made the photos. Her child's life was in danger. Understand that if she hadn't cooperated, and Robert Oswald is on record saying from the very beginning, they said, if you don't cooperate with us, we'll deport you. And that meant she and baby June, who was born in the USSR, would be sent back to Russia. But her baby Rachel, who was born in America, an American citizen, would not. She'd lose one of her babies if she didn't cooperate. Did you know that?
So I'm as you're saying these things, I'm looking them up, and this is what I come up with, and I think this is what you were referring to as the original photo.
What? That's not the original at all. Whose head is that? That is not it. That's not him.
And
that's
and then
fake.
if you go back,
That's a fake. That's not the original photo at all. Somebody made that up. I know these by heart.
there is another one that shows exactly what you were talking about, where you can see his ring.
Yeah, that's right.
And you can see his ring. It's right there
On the right hand, on the
right hand in that picture. And
right.
then if you come over to the following photo,
And
you'll
it's on
see
the
it's on the left hand right there.
That's exactly right. Also, he's wearing a watch. Lee Oswald told me about this date and everything. Is this very same date when he's supposed to these films. He told me from the time he left Jagger's Child Stovall, where he had every 15 minutes or 20, he had to go look at his watch and put when he was making these photos for this company. He said, I got so sick of that watch. He said, I took it off the minute that I quit the company. They said he was fired, but he was supposed to quit. Okay. Because to go on to something else. And that's what's so remarkable. He had a Benris watch, and I found out because my dad gave me a Benris watch so I could do when I was doing my lab experiments, because it had a minute hand on it. One that swept,
Sure.
your tertiary hand. And Lee had a Benris watch the same way. He took it off and didn't use it. It's on record that he owned it, though. He also, by the way, had much stuff is missing. Like he had a Norelco razor, and an electric razor he carried with him, so that he could shave himself, because his beard would come in so fast that by the end of the day he had to shave again. By the way, I'd just like you to know that. But that razor's disappeared. Anything that was really nice that he had, that disappeared, like he had nothing, like he was a nobody, like he had no resources at all. And certainly they planted this stupid cheap camera on him, not realizing that he had a realist camera, took 3-dimensional pictures. Yeah, he had a camera, a wonderful Sirona from the USSR, took excellent photos, and he had a Minox. The Minox, my dad owned a Minox. My dad was, by the way, had security clearance. Our whole family did. That's another story, how we got involved in all that. But my dad was almost on the rocket projects, but my mother objected. But at any rate, Dad had a Minox as well. So I knew all about the Minox and recognized it when I saw Lee pull it out to take a picture with, which is I talk about in the book. And at that time, of course, when I saw that Minox, I recognized immediately, hey, that's an expensive camera. All the expensive cameras that Lee had, Marina said, yes, they were his. But then Ruth Payne said, oh, no, those don't belong to you. They belong to me. And the Imperial Reflex belongs to you. Now, here's the bad part. That was 620 film. Now, 620 film isn't, excuse me, this every time the air turns on, I want to sneeze from dust. We got to get a new filter up there. But yeah. But at any rate, here we have 620 film, black and white. Lee didn't have any other photos made with that camera. They all came from they showed their photos from the Russian camera, and even later from the Minox. Okay, but there's no 620. But guess who did have 620 film? All kinds of slides made with 620 film. She had 300 of them. That's Ruth Payne. And they're trying to say that wasn't Ruth Payne's camera. We've got plenty. We have Kennedy's and King. That's a site that's online, Kennedy's and King. And you'll see, if you look up backyard photos and about these cameras, you're going to see that they agree with me. There's no way that Lee Oswald would have owned that camera. Plenty of information showing us it was Ruth Payne who owned the camera. But of course, it's wonderful. I love to show the fine cameras that he had. And we have backup because it says on Lee's passport application, it says, what's your occupation? And he writes, photographer. Do you think a photographer would have credit camera and only one camera? And yet he had 3D, like they showed 3D films that he had that you could buy. You used to be able to see like Grand Canyon. They show those. But I know he had made 3D circles himself, with the doubles. He made his own slides that way. And he processed his own film. Now, why would he, if he processed his own film, and I saw his dope, I saw all the stuff he had to do that with, all the chemicals, why would the backyard photos then be processed in a store, which they were? Because they didn't know that Lee Oswald processed his own film. So it's stamped on the back, processed, at some place. Lee would have, it's black and white, so easy, I can process film if it's black and white. So could he, of course. So why would he go and pay to have it processed and done with an inferior camera? Well, this was all to frame him. Absolutely. So all the details I do have in my books, and because I'm supporting the truth, you're not going to get the truth from the CIA or the FBI or the media. To this day, if you see a reporter saying Oswald did it, don't trust that reporter on anything else. It is the litmus test.
The big question is, and Truthful over here in the comments has asked it, do we actually know who pulled the trigger? Do we actually know who did the deed?
First, we have to eliminate those who did not pull the trigger. All right. And there are different ways to do that. For example, I'm sorry, James Files looks good, but we have a big problem with him. He said that the name of his handler was David Atlee Phillips. Again, how did he know the middle name, which doesn't come out? How did he know his real name when Phillips used over 50 fake names when he's handling all the people he handled, never used his real name with his contacts? That kept them separate. And as I said, Lee was given actually 3 different names: Benson, Benton, and finally Bishop. And only because he traced flights that were made 6 days or so before he arrived in Mexico City, and saw that one of them went to Fort Worth, and realized and retraced that, he realized it had to be Phillips. He didn't call, by the way, when he said to me, remember that name, Dave, he said David Atlee Phillips. He actually found the middle name. There's no way that James Files would have known the name of his handler, nor would he have had a direct contact. You couldn't get, according to Files, he was able to phone. He could make a phone call to David Atlee Phillips directly. I mean, Phillips' own agents couldn't do that. They have cutouts. These are always to protect them. There's no way. So we know when there may be things that Files did, but he didn't do that. So, and don't you know, I'd love to use him because he exonerates Lee as a shooter. Of course, I'd want to use him if I could, but I'm not going to use somebody who's not telling the truth. And I'm sorry, he can't be telling the truth if he says that he knew the name, even the middle name of David Phillips. However, he had access in jail to all kinds of Kennedy books, it turns out, which I didn't realize. Plus, he had access, of course, to mafia, because he was mafia himself. So why he did this, their motives I can't explain. And now that poor man is in hospice care. And I know he knew a lot. And maybe he did this because he had done really bad things himself. And he became a Christian. And I think he was trying to somehow make up for that, I'm not going to hold it against him, but I cannot, I wish I could say something about him. Now that's Phillips on the left in the photo, and you can't miss certain things and aspects about him. Lee would be able to tell all about him from anywhere. There is a really nice passport photo of Lee you might have. You'll see what he looked like just a couple of years later when I knew him. And he's got these cute puppy dog eyes. And anyway, we were young and we easily fell in love. I'll just put it that way. And was he stupid? Oh, no. Oh, my gosh. If you only knew how quickly he picked up Russian, for example, and he learned most of it in Belarus, in Minsk, in the USSR. And George de Mohrenschildt said he had fantastic Russian.
That makes I know quite a bit.
Right.
I've heard a lot. Mohrenschildt.
Well, George de Mohrenschildt knew this wonderful Belarusian style Russian. I like to talk about it like it had an accent like, how y'all doing out there, huh? Like that. compared to what Marina spoke, which was Leningrad, highfalutin. All right, now, no, you're looking at the wrong one. This is his first passport when he went to Russia. I would like you to, this is the second one, the passport he got. When he came back from the USSR, he couldn't use that for ID. You can see why. It had stamped all over it, USSR. He could get arrested. So he had to get a new passport. And I was there and shook the hands of the man who actually was flown in to issue his passport to him in only 24 hours. He put it in on June 24th. On June 25th, he had his passport. That was in New Orleans. And it's marvelous to see. They also processed a few more at the same time. Even put a little ad in the paper that they were going to speed up the passports temporarily, apparently, because it didn't happen again. But very interesting on this passport, just to show you. Lee said, I could have put my name as Santa Claus on this, and they still would have given it to me in just one day. He was telling me these things because of the work he was doing. I could easily think he was a double agent. So he was proving to me that he was really working for the CIA. It was very important because we were going to plan our lives together. So I did get to meet Charles Thomas. And he put himself down, by the way, as Arthur Young. That's a joke because Young was the helicopter guy. You're talking about Halliburton and all that, run by the former Nazis and everything. That's who Michael Payne was working for. The Nazi connection is very strong. Now, here is Lee Oswald, and he shows me his application to get the passport. It is hilarious. For example, it says, "Who are you married to?" He says, Maria, what was her name? Maria Prusakova. Okay. When did you marry her? April 31st, 1961. There is no April 31st, 1961. There's only April 1st. It's right there on his passport application. It didn't matter what he was showing me. He could put down anything. They'd still pass it in 24 hours. So he put that on there. He also put, where did he intend to go for a year and a half? He says he's going to be traveling overseas. He says he's going to go back to USSR. It says he's going to go to Poland, which is USSR satellite. It says that he's going to go all over the place. All right. This is the height of the Cold War. You can't do that. And you've turned in a passport loaded with Soviet passport stamps. Think about it. And he still gets it in 24 hours. They had a fit. I want to tell you, CIA had a blooming fit. So did, of course, Secret Service and all that. When they're looking at the application, they said, when did this happen? They went through all their agents. None of them had the name of Arthur Young, of course. And they couldn't figure out what was going on. You can see the name Young scribbled on there in magenta ink. It's in my book, Lee Harvey Oswald and me. I have it in color so you can see. By the way, as far as occupation, Lee didn't even fill in his occupation on that application form. The guy, Charles Thomas himself, that is Arthur Young, a.k.a., he's the one that filled out photographer in his magenta ink, and you can see that. So in other words, CIA actually filled out the customs, all right, this former customs officer. And I went to his family, and you'll see in the book, Lee had known him for almost 10 years because when he was only 12 years old, was living briefly in New York, he was a truant who was never in school. Lee actually, now remember, a decade later, he would enter the Soviet Union. Less than a decade later, I should say, when he was, but at this time he's about 12, and he actually hitchhiked all the way to cross the border into Canada. And so I have this whole family that recognizes this. I said, I can show you, Lee, your grandfather, your father, because he was dead by then. I said, he had tattoos on his fingers. Yes, he did. Okay, they agreed to that. I said, he had an accent. And they said, yes, he did. I said, he could speak Spanish fluently. Yes, he could. All right, but he, I thought he had some kind of funny accent. They said it was a Welsh. One of them said it was a Welsh accent. But the other thing that's interesting is I said, when he was working as customs agent, he was in charge of the border up there in Buffalo, New York, between Canada and the United States. And they said, yes. And they said, and he put Lee on a bus that said Crystal Beach and sent him to let him go to Crystal Beach over on the other side. They said, "Oh, Crystal Beach." And they came out with a photograph. It shows the bus right with their father, their grandfather, at customs there, right at the border. And behind there is a bus that says Crystal Beach. That blew them away, because I knew things all about their dad that nobody knew, because these were family photographs. So anyway, I have different witnesses. I mean, that whole family is one. And they assisted me in finding out other information as well later on. Kelly Thomas is one of them that helped a lot. So we have Lee Oswald is pretending, as you can imagine, that he's filling out an application he knows is going to be just fine. And he puts there that he is 5'11" when he's 5'9". He did that on all his important documents that were government documents. So did David Ferry. He was also 5'9" and put on there that he was 5'11". So did Senator Cruz's father, Raffaello, had to be CIA. He's only like 5'6", and he put they was 6 feet tall on his formal passport. You can find that right online. How did he get away with 6 feet tall when he was a little shorter than his own son? Well, there are many, many stories I can tell you about different people and what they had to do and say to defend themselves. So they wouldn't. For example, when Mr. Cruz saw that his name was mentioned in the wrong places, Bailey, I should say his photograph was seen in the Warren
Commission. So, guys, while she's logging back on, we are going to take a quick break, and we will be right back after these messages.
This marks the potential start of a third world war, where we will be hit with a silent, untraceable attack on America that unfortunately very few will see coming. This attack will be unlike any we have seen before, the one that directly targets our power grid, which will cause a nationwide blackout and plunge our great nation into darkness, despair, and starvation. I know some patriots have been preparing for this eventuality, but stockpiling and growing your own food is simply not enough, because this marks just the first phase of this orchestrated attack on America. And with Sleepy Joe and his team of incompetents at the helm, people will soon realize no one is coming to save them. Then it will be every man for himself. The looting will begin. Supermarkets will be ransacked. Local gangs and marauders will target anyone who looks like easy pickings. And by the end of the first week, millions of unprepared, desperate, and hungry Americans will be eating from garbage cans, if they're lucky. And that's exactly what our enemies want, to destroy our great nation from the inside. But the reality is, you do not have to be a victim. There is something you can do to prepare. Hi, my name is Teddy Daniels. I am a United States war hero, a White House insider, and a Purple Heart recipient. And I just released an emergency broadcast that reveals the one thing you must do in the first hour of the attack. That will guarantee you will have a power supply for you and your family. These 3 secrets will give you peace of mind and unlimited power during this critical time. By seeing this right now makes you one of the lucky ones. Because when the attack happens, most Americans will have no idea what hit them, but not you. You'll be in complete control, and that puts a lot of power in your hands. Yes, others may laugh when they see you quietly preparing for this imminent attack, but once our power grid fails, those woke millennials won't be laughing anymore. They will be wishing they had prepared, while you and your family prosper and thrive. But you need to move fast. I have it on good authority. This attack could start as soon as next week. So I urge any American or true patriot to watch my emergency broadcast right now before it gets taken down again by the powers that be to protect their controlling interests. Watch it now while you still can, like your life depends on it, because it does.
Have you noticed the ever-alarming 400,000 cell towers that have gone up in the United States alone? How about the electronics that reside in every room of our homes and Wi-Fi that runs 24/7? 5G cell phones are carried in our pockets hours on end. Common complaints are ringing in the ear: sleep deprivation, palpitations, headaches, memory loss, and so much more. Redemption Shield is on the cutting edge of offering products that protect your family from electromagnetic and microwave radiation. From Faraday bags, earthing bed sheets, Wi-Fi router covers, hats, scarves, bed sanctuaries. This will not be going away anytime soon. We will continue to see only faster speeds, 6G, 7G, and more exposure to EMF than any time in our history. Start protecting yourself now. Go to redemptionshield.com and get grounded and shielded today. Use code PATRIOT and save 10%.
Guys, we're back, and so is Judyth. So, Judyth, continue where you left off. I apologize. We're talking about passports and cruising.
Yeah,
And,
I've been jumping around a lot. And
yeah, I did have a couple of those videos that I think that we went over that I definitely, and we're in no hurry, that I do eventually I want to touch on. But the context that you're bringing to this is extremely important, because I knew that Ted Cruz was born on a military base, and that's why his presidency at times were contested because it was out of the country, but it was still U.S. soil, and they tried to make a big deal out of it.
And he was conceived, by the way, in America, apparently. It looks that way, at least. I don't think there'd be any problem because, poor Cruz, it's unfortunate. His father, a good man, had just come in to visit to New Orleans to visit his sister. Yeah, I think that's the way it went. And at any rate, they thought, well, nobody knows him. We'll just, recruit him here, because the first time, actually the second time, Lee actually leafleted the USS Wasp in May. All this was to finger out Castro's spies and everything. Castro would send them, and they were working like a stevedores. It was very important to find out where they were and who they were. And also these spies, of course, if they could find out any of the medical people who were involved in projects to try to kill Castro, they're going to kill him. They're going to kill him. So Lee's actual work for us was as protector, as defender, as someone who pretended to be pro-Castro to ferret out these kind of people. And he was responsible. That's why you'll see not the same address all the time on his FP, the Fair Play for Cuba Commission flyers that he sent out, but the addresses would change, because as they captured some of these spies that were lured to, like, it said lectures, and it said meetings. He never held one lecture, never held one meeting, just kept putting out the flyers, and they would go try and contact, no answer. But they knew they were surveilling these sites or their mailboxes, and it was easy then to follow them for a while and then arrest them, so it wouldn't be connected to Lee. And Lee also was responsible for other things that went on, pretending to be pro-Castro, but you see, they were able to use that against him and say he was a communist. Wait a minute, what communist do you know today? Say it's North Korea. Can you imagine North Korea, somebody defecting there and saying, I will kill any American I see in a military uniform. I'll kill them, and I'm renouncing my American citizenship. And have that person who defected to North Korea come back then with a wife and child who are North Korean, okay? And nothing happens. Now, don't get me wrong. Other defectors who were real defectors, when they came back, they are almost one and all were arrested, or they never really actually returned to the U.S. at all. And they had to abandon their lovers, or if they brought them along, we only have a couple instances where they had to go live in hell. If they were real defectors, they ended up. So when I saw Lee, and by the way, we can go into a lot of detail about how I understood from the time I met him, when I realized from our first meeting that he was walking around a free man in the United States after he told me he had been had been back not quite a year yet from the USSR, where he had spent 30 months and had a Russian wife and child. I looked at him and said, "You are a hero. You're my shining hero." I said, "I know, absolutely, that's impossible." This is because of the people I knew. Because of the people I knew, I lucked out in one way, because when I was sent to New Orleans, I wasn't supposed to be witting. I wasn't supposed to be treated as someone who knew what was going on. But because I came 2.5 weeks early and I knew so much, and my family, I said, had clearance and everything, security clearance. And I knew people who were real spies, like Knut Mickelson. And I had dated Tony Lopez Fresquet, who was the son of Cuba's finance minister, Rufo. And I knew all the stuff that I shouldn't have known. They thought I was on the winning side. And that's how, when my doctors came back too late, and now I'll be able to begin with my credentials, and I think I should. But giving all these interesting things to show you what I knew, so that people understand that I had in-depth knowledge of what Lee was doing.
Well, the context, I believe, is very, very important, because you're talking about taking out a sitting president of the United States.
Yes.
And there have to be so many, safeguards put in place. And I guess they would have never imagined of the technological advances that we would have now.
That's right.
And the ability for us to see through the charade to the level that we can currently do that. And I mean, I'm very much looking forward to. I just saw an interview with Glenn Beck, Kash Patel, sitting down talking, and Kash was saying that he read the entire file, and that they are going to release it. And he stops there. He doesn't take it any further, but he also says he's like the 9/11 files that'll be released and all that, but he doesn't go into detail yet. And a lot of people, including myself, we cannot wait for January. First, we couldn't wait for November. Now we can't wait for January, because there are so many things that our government, I guess they just lost they're supposed to be serving us. We're not supposed to be treated like serfs. They're supposed to work for us. But they act as if you guys just aren't intelligent enough to understand why we're doing these things. You're just, leave us to it. You're better off. They treat us like parents would treat an unwitting child. And they do a lot of things that they shouldn't do. And I've had conversations with FBI agent by the name of Bruce Yarbrough, and we were talking about the JFK assassination, and he sat down for probably the 15 minutes to try to explain to me how it was that JFK was absolutely shot from the back, not from the front, and how his head would have jumped forward, then back from the reaction. And he had this whole explanation that was just so readily available, you could tell it was rehearsed.
Well, that's impossible, actually, physically. Anybody who shot a deer knows that the deer's head doesn't go forward first before it goes shot. Then when they're shot, it's going to go backward with the force of the bullet, period.
Yeah. But it's so easy to try. It doesn't matter what the thing is. People are a certain amount of our population are just so ready and willing to believe whatever the mainstream media says, whether it be wear your COVID mask, even though COVID, you could fit 1,000 COVID drops on the head of a needle that would go through the microns on a mask. It wouldn't matter if you wore 10 masks. Or if it's the 9/11 theory where the building fell in 9.2 seconds, it's 91 stories tall, and it fell at free fall speed. There's no way in hell that could possibly happen. I'm in Las Vegas. We see buildings all the time. Building 7, you saw the ever-present kink and then the fall. And let's not forget that PBS BBC, had a news story running saying that the Solomon Brothers building fell before it's standing right behind it. And then all of a sudden the picture pixelates and it goes away. Oh, we lost her. No, somebody screwed up the timeline and they reported it before they should have. And all of these things are not anything more to me than indicators of a cabal of intelligence agencies that is very well proven to be working through our media. People think the media is the free press. They are not the free press. They are intelligence agents. I know for a fact that Anderson Cooper worked for the CIA before he worked for CNN. And Project Mockingbird is probably alive and well. I mean, what we saw happening at Twitter with Matt Taibbi and all of that, I'm certain that it's happening at Google. I'm certain it's happening at NBC, ABC, CBS, and Fox News. It's happening everywhere. We talked a little bit about how even when we had PPN affiliates go on shows like the Ingram Angle, where we were talking about the involvement of Kamala Harris's family in the slave trade, they immediately changed the topic. They did not. They walk up to the line and they posture like they're conservative, like they're truth tellers. But there's a line for which they don't go beyond.
Pleased with all that you're saying, because you have nothing to gain and only trouble to get from speaking like this. I've lived through an awful lot. And of course, you can imagine, just from being cut off like this, imagine what they've said about me. And they'll say about anybody who's a really good witness. Yeah. All right. Now there's a picture of, again, that's the Soviet picture of Lee. There's an update, though, if you can find it. It's his passport photograph from New Orleans.
I was looking for it. I couldn't find it. I was looking for it as you were saying it. And they were all very degraded looking, the ones that were available.
Oh, my.
I couldn't find it.
Well, all I can say is, of course, I have good photos. Oh, let's start, though, at the beginning. I've said all of this to give you an idea of some depth and where we can go from then on, you know. But how did it all start? You know, I mean, how did I ever get to know him and everything? Usually I'm asked right from the beginning, how did you meet Lee Oswald? And it's so inappropriate because...
Truth Teller says you were a fox.
I had a lot of boyfriends. I always loved them. And I was a good girl. I've been raised that way. But I was very athletic. I actually earned 4 medals in athletics when I was in University of Florida, among other things I did. But it starts way back during Sputnik, when everybody scored high. When Sputnik went up, a lot of IQ tests went out because the CIA and the government itself said, wait a minute, we've got to do something. We're way behind. You know, we may have relied on all these Nazis we brought in, you know, with Operation Paperclip, but the USSR also brought them
in. And the rest, and yeah, we were divided amongst Russia and the United States.
And they were ahead. They were so much ahead in that area.
A lot of conspiracy theories about Wernher von Braun and the cryptic message that exists on his tombstone. That's a whole different podcast, but yeah, it's all very interesting. Very interesting.
What was the message? I'd like to know.
So the message was about the firmament. And it talked about the firmament that, you know, in the Genesis, God says he separated the waters above from the waters beneath with the firmament. And there is a very popular theory of people that believe there is a firmament above us. And what we're looking at in space is not just space, but beyond that firmament is water.
Well, I could say a lot about that. People misunderstanding what they're reading in the Bible and the interpretations thereof. It's pretty clear in the original languages, which I love to read in Scripture. A good example is people that think that Christ was born. There's no room in the inn, when back then the word, you know, starts with a K, but in the Greek, there's no doubt about it that they were like most every traveler. They had relatives. Joseph had relatives there, but she's pregnant and everything, and he's not literally not married to her yet. It's very embarrassing. Whether there was room for them in the upper room, they always had upper rooms for their guests. But they ended up, on the ground floor there with the livestock and so on. And it probably wasn't as bad as it sounds in many ways because the family is on the ground floor.
A lot of folks had kept livestock inside the homes at that point because of the heat.
Because they all kept warm that way, And so I've always studied that. Of course, I've been to Israel. I wanted to see it with my own eyes, all these things. Many, many caves in not only Bethlehem, but also in Nazareth. And it's interesting that about the time Christ was living there, that all of a sudden the caves turned into stone houses. As you know, carpenters actually did stonework. And I'm thinking Christ probably built half those old houses. Some of them still exist there in Nazareth, by the way.
Well, I know that they found housing in Israel with the names carved into the stone where they could tell where Peter's home was. And there's a lot, they tried to say at one point that the Hittites didn't exist, and then they found the Hittites did exist. A lot of folks have gone on these long journeys to disprove the Bible, and like Lee Strobel and others. And what happens? They all end up typically becoming Christian at the end of the day. So
I was an atheist. I understand that. You get so arrogant in what you think you know. And it was all wiped out for me when Christ couldn't get through any other way, I think. So he had to come and see me. And that did it.
So I think we lost her again. So what I'm going to do, guys, is I'm going to go back to another commercial break while she gets her stuff back online. But this is getting interesting. Now we're getting ready to start to get a lot of the answers to the questions that we all want to know. So don't go away. This is getting ready to get very, very interesting. Hold on.
Since the beginning of time, all living creatures rely on the sun's source of natural light to grow and to help promote overall wellness. We are all light beings. The patches are all natural and drug-free that uses the body's own natural light to help promote general health and wellness. How it works. Simply place the patch on specific points on your body and where the patch is placed on your skin. It reflects back into the body when it's tapped into its own flow of natural energy, which in turn creates the GHK-Cu copper peptide, which rejuvenates your cells and gives you a more younger, healthier you.
Trump's left the building.
Over. We can now project the winner of the presidential race. Donald Trump wins the presidency.
What started off as unlikely, impossible, is now reality.
I will fight for you with every breath in my body, and I will never, ever let you down.
We have a president who actually fulfilled the promises he made during the campaign. Securing the border to foreign policy.
He now has a record as president that's pretty damn impressive.
Breaking news out of Palm Beach,
The FBI has executed an unprecedented search warrant at President Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate.
The former president has both sides of the political aisle up in arms.
It is a dangerous and unstable moment in American history.
The Justice Department has just indicted former President Donald Trump.
For 7 years, they hated him, they targeted him, they hunted him.
This is the epitome of the abuse of the prosecutorial power to preempt political decisions.
I never thought anything like this could happen in America. The only crime that I have committed is to fearlessly defend our nation from those who seek to destroy it. The more that a broken system tells you that you're wrong, the more certain you should be that you must keep pushing ahead. They want to take away my freedom because I will never let them take away your freedom. They want to silence me because I will never let them silence you. They're not coming after me, they're coming after you, and I just happen to be standing in their way, and I will never be moving. On November 5th, 2024, justice will be done. We will take back our country, and we will make America great again. America will always rise to every challenge. and overcome every danger.
Donald Trump seems to always get stronger when challenged. These types of things, I think, give him strength.
When I'm reelected, I will totally obliterate the deep state. As long as we have pride in our beliefs, courage in our convictions, and faith in our God, then we will not fail.
God, I get so much pride every time I watch that.
I
really have. I've never ever.
It's our great hope.
I've never believed in a politician in my life. I mean, we're talking about JFK right now, and as good of a man as JFK was by today's standards, he would be impeached immediately. I mean, the Marilyn Monroe scandal, the ties to the mafia and the whole thing. I mean, we didn't have access to information the same way, and normal American didn't have the ability to go online, and people weren't under the level of scrutiny that they are today. And when you see a guy,
told them, though, he was a much better man than they've made him out to be. They've done everything they can to smirch and degrade Kennedy. Even the Smithsonian, when they described the U-2 boat cut in half, they made sure everybody knew it was basically his fault. And they didn't even mention that he saved Pappy by taking the part of straps in his teeth and pulling him for miles to safety, and that his feet were all lacerated. Kennedy's were, and yet he never quit. I mean, this is a great and heroic man, and I don't care what other things he did. He was born into a family that had these connections. His dad made the connection to the mafia. He didn't. There are many ways to show that Kennedy was also given injections of testosterone that were enormous, because they were giving him medications that were making him impotent. So then they overdid the other, just like they overdid female hormone pills at first. And women were getting cancer and blood clots and everything from it because they were giving him way too high. I mean, they were giving him enough to make a bull out of him. And then he was worried about his own potency. And so it was easy to distract him. And by the way, his father introduced him when he was only 12 to brothels. I mean, he said, at your level, you understand that you can have mistresses, and that's just fine. So, I mean, he wasn't taught properly to begin with. And near the end, when little Patrick died, by the way, we have a lot of evidence. All of a sudden, Jackie and Kennedy are holding hands and even kissing in public. They really made up for things. Little did she know that she had only a brief period of time. They were trying to have another baby. But the point is he stopped consorting with his, he had these girls, for example, in the pool with him, and he stopped with fiddle and faddle. He stopped doing that. He stopped seeing his mistress, and a letter inviting her to the White House never got mailed, and so on. There's a lot of evidence that he had changed his mind about all of that. And it's like they were falling in love again. So it was especially hard on Jackie.
The United States, for being supposedly a country of second chances, I can personally attest to the fact that that is not the case. I mean, if it were up to me, Judyth, I would be running for office tomorrow. I would start tomorrow. And I know immediately the media would lambast me because of my past. But it doesn't define me as a man of who I am today, right now.
That's right, Eddie.
And the guy's just willing to do whatever is right, and whatever happens, happens. But, to have the media tell it's much like Trump. They will go to extreme lengths to discredit anybody they don't like or anyone they see as a threat to them. We've had many good men on this podcast, Jeff Zink and Ryan Zink. Jeff was running for office in Arizona, Ryan, and then went to January the 6th. And the federal government literally photoshopped false evidence against his son to put him in prison. And when they showed them the real evidence to prove that he was innocent, they still made this man do 36 days in prison. And I think he's been ready to get out right now. And they moved him to Arizona specifically because that's where his dad was running for office, because they knew they didn't know, but they were trying to use that as a threat. Stay quiet. Stop talking about J6. Stop talking about these things. We have your son in prison, and we're going to put him in a very dangerous place. And so I had a conversation with Ryan and Jeff prior to that, and I gave them kind of the roadmap to how to navigate that situation when he went into intake, because of my own past, and I understand exactly how prison works and the way, you know, which he could have navigated that situation to stay safe. And we're looking forward to interviewing Ryan when he comes home. And it's a sad situation. And when Trump talks about obliterating the deep state, he is going to have his hands full for the next 4 years, because
they're going to sabotage everything.
It's going to be an uphill battle the entire time. Now, Judyth, can I show you a video of Miss Madeline? And this is to give context to this to people so they understand. This is LBJ's mistress. She was witness to several. She was witness to some things, and to talk about just a real quick overview of LBJ as a man. The Great American Society Act, which destroyed the Black community, even to this day. They went from a fatherless rate of somewhere around 24% to a fatherless rate of up over 70% as a result of what he did. And signing the Civil Rights Act was just a show. It was like he was putting on a show, because the Constitution was already written and the rights given to man were already assigned. And so
that was JFK's bill that he had actually stood in front of and stopped from being passed, by the way. But once he becomes president, he takes the credit for it. I'd like to add also that JFK had a rocking chair, just to show you what he did. LBJ threw his rocking chair, that is Kennedy's rocking chair, out of the hall the night of the 22nd before midnight, and threw everything out. Poor Jackie went in there to look at the desk and get her husband's things out, already been rifled through. She saw that everything she had planned, and it was so beautiful. It was got all redecorated. It was already, the rugs were being rolled up, and so on. And guess what? When he's shown again on film and on TV, LBJ is sitting in a rocking chair of his own.
And let's not forget the USS Liberty, which LBJ was absolutely responsible for. And when the Israeli fighter pilots that were bombing the USS Liberty recognized it as an American vessel, they radioed in and said, "Hey, whoa, what are we doing here? This is an American vessel." And LBJ's words were, "I want that damn ship on the bottom of the ocean."
Absolutely. And Phil Nelson has written a book. Now, Phil recently died, but he defended me upside down and backwards. God bless him. But he wrote the book, Remember the Liberty. It's really good.
Yeah, I mean, and so all of that gives context to the fact that LBJ hated the Kennedys. Vehemently hated them. And I think you're getting ready to hear Madeline talk to that.
Let's talk about the next day in Dallas. Where were you at the time
of the assassination? I was, I'd packed my car to go to Austin for the big fundraiser. And they were having a meeting of the Democrats down the old Red Courthouse. And they were fussing. Some of them were highly disenchanted about John Kennedy coming to Texas. And so here they were wrangling, which was very common. So I was lighthearted, and I said, "Hey guys, I'm going on to Austin. I'll see you guys in Austin tonight." And I blew them a kiss. I walked out of the Red Courthouse, and we didn't have all the parking problem. I get in my automobile. You could hear the parade, the noise from the parade. I drove across the Houston Street Viaduct in order to hit the highway to go to Austin. And impulsively, I said, I want to have time to have my hair fixed in Austin, so I'll go by, let's see, was it Teich's, the beauty salon, and get my hair freshened so I could go on to Austin. And again, it's about maybe 10 minutes or less trip from the Red Courthouse. And as I walked in the door, they were already on the television that he had been shot. So I asked if I could use the phone. I knew if anyone knew anything, it would be just Kellum in Austin, because they carried all 3 networks. So I called Jess and I said, what is going on? First I called Lou Sterrett at downtown, and I said, my God, what has happened, Lou? And here are people that should have been out at the Trademark for the luncheon, but they were still downtown. And he said, well, they just shot that SOB. And maybe Lyndon. Well, when Lou told me it was Lyndon, of course it was very upsetting. And I didn't live all that far from the where I had my hair fixed. Jess from my house. I said, Jess, what is going on? And he told me at that time. He even said that he was sure he had passed away. Or was
you thought he was talking about Johnson?
Yeah, but but I had already verified that it was not Lyndon, okay. It was John Conlon.
And Kennedy. Let's go back to the night before. When Johnson came out of the meeting, what did he say to you?
He was so angry. He had a violent temper when he was upset.
Well, let's use the exact words that he said to you. What did he say to you?
He grabbed me by the arm, and he had this deep voice, and he said, after tomorrow, those SOBs will never embarrass me again. That's no threat. That's a promise. And it startled me, really, because he was so ruddy-faced, and I thought, oh, well, he really, something went on that shouldn't have gone on, But he called me from the Texas hotel the next morning as I was going downtown, right. And hear this screaming voice of his. He was so irate, and he didn't give me any time to talk to him. He just he was still angry. And when I talked to Jess Kellum right after that, I said, wow, he's on a real violent binge, And then I passed it off. I said, well, after tonight at the Driscoll, he'll be all right. Yeah. And, of course, I didn't see him again until...
What were the words he said to you over the phone?
That they would never embarrass him again. That SOB, the Irish Mafia, I think. He referred to him as the Irish Mafia very often.
But he said they would never embarrass him again?
I'd never embarrass him again. There was no threat. That was a promise. And there were violent feelings that have never been told that was between those two people.
Wow. So that is a full-throated indictment from his own mistress to, speak to the fact that Lyndon Johnson was no fan of the Kennedys. And as you can see in that video, she did not mince words. Pretty good tell a character when someone's lying, and she did not appear at all to be lying. Judyth, are you with me? I think that you're frozen again. So we're going to go to break real quick while she gets ready to come back on, and we will be right back after these messages, folks.
Introducing the Trump token, America's cryptocurrency, a digital revolution to make America great again. Built on the high-performance Solana blockchain, the Trump token merges the economic principles of Bitcoin with the speed, scalability, and efficiency of modern technology. Designed to empower politically engaged communities, the Trump token taps into 3 major demand ecosystems: the Trump community, global cryptocurrency enthusiasts, and the internationally recognized Trump brand. In a world of financial uncertainty, the Trump token stands as a scarce and durable digital asset, positioned for growth within a rapidly expanding global market. Powered by Solana, the Trump token offers lightning-fast transactions, unparalleled scalability, and robust security, making it the ideal currency for both everyday use and political engagement. With a total supply capped at 21 million Trump tokens, 10 million are available for pre-sale at just $10 per token. In a powerful show of support, 50% of all pre-sale proceeds will be donated to Donald J. Trump's 2024 presidential campaign via super PACs. That's right, up to $50 million of crypto in kind will be donated to ensure Trump wins. On top of the donation, 40% free additional Trump tokens will be distributed over 36 months to all pre-sale participants who hold. Check out our official white paper for more. Driven by a decentralized governance model, the Trump token empowers its community to shape its future, ensuring the token remains aligned with the values of its supporters. Together, let's make America great again. Go to thetrumptoken.com to get involved. The Trump Token. Own America's cryptocurrency now.
Well, there it is. We left off, and you probably have heard that video, know what she's talking about already. What's your reaction to that?
Well, Madeline Brown, by the way, I'm friends with her sister-in-law, Peggy Brown, okay? And she concurs with me, you know, all that mad. Of course, she didn't know what to do after LBJ died, and she tried to continue payments for her son, okay, who was fathered by LBJ. It didn't work out very well. She tried different methods, and they've used that against her. But, you know, when somebody's dead, there's no way to really prove a lot of things. DNA testing wasn't that good yet, you know. Right. All right, to make a long story short, her son, Stephen, ended up disappearing during court battles. And later you find out he dies in a hospital, okay, of cancer. And again, we have a lot of people dying of cancer conveniently. Yeah, but basically, they often say that this meeting never happened at the Murchison residence there in Dallas, even though Murchison was living elsewhere and had basically given to relatives that place, and they weren't living there at the time. It was a very convenient place to meet. Everybody knew where it was there on the lake. It's a beautiful mansion and all that. And I have no doubt whatsoever that occurred, because Peggy said, you know, what she said, Mad, they called her Mad, you know, for Madeline. She told me, she said, it's got to be in the papers. We had a couple of reporters there. All these important people were there, you know. And I took that and ran with it, because I know a lot of things have been removed from microfiche. They might be in the regular papers, but they didn't get photographed. And sure enough, there's a big black spot right about where it would have been. I believe that I'm only believing this. I can't prove it. I always tell you if I can't prove something, but that big black hole there in the microfiche is just about where in the social pages where it should have said something about that meeting, because she was surprised. What? You mean it's not in the papers? And I believe it was removed. And of course, they destroy the papers and only have the microfiche. They can take out any kinds of things they want. A number of different newspaper articles I have actually copied with microfiche from the microfiche, from the Dallas Public Library on the top floor at that time. Or you go in New Orleans, the same kind of thing. And now they're not there anymore. So they're systematically removing a lot of information.
More than you. I mean, I've found this out of my own research and work as a citizen journalist. I remember the Oklahoma City bombing at the Alpha P. Murrow building, and Channel 9, news in Oklahoma City that they reported there were 4 bombs. There were 3 inside. One went off in the Ryder truck, and then 2 of them were brought out in cast iron containers live on the news that they said were larger than the one that had went off. So they were thinking they're lucky stars that those didn't go off. I used to be able to find that video readily. It was on YouTube. It was everywhere. You could pull it up. But as time went by, that video got harder and harder to find. But it took me about an hour, a little about 4 or 5 days ago. It took me about an hour to find that video, and I put that video up on my on X to show people that there was a lot more going on that day than what they understand. So that's just one example of how they do go about cleansing the timelines and so forth, just like you're talking about, so that people get a very skewed version of history.
I've tried to save people's lives, tell them, don't take your MMR shot. Please don't take these bundled shots. And for anybody listening right now, I'm going to repeat this because the information I put up over 10 years ago was scrubbed out. It would have saved lives, and it's very frustrating. For example, and I've said this other places recently, but take it to heart. No child has ever gotten mumps, measles, and rubella at the same time. But to bundle these shots, all three of them together, and expect them not to affect the immune system certain ways, you're overexcited the immune system, and then you're going to have it attacking certain organs, perhaps the brain. And we have, you can go and measure autism going up, right along with the rate of percentage of people who get MMR shots, little kids. And cancer, the average baby gets all these shots. The average childhood cancer is at 6 years of age when they've already had the majority of these shots that we know. Some of them were supplemented with pieces of SV40 monkey virus used as what they said, a promoter. Well, they used to call it a cancer promoter, but they took the word cancer out. So it's all chopped up and it's going to happen. But wait a minute, viruses have always some segment missing, and they become activated by colliding into a live cell. It'll find the piece that's missing and activate it. And you get enough shots, enough booster shots, you're going to find enough pieces, and then you're going to see cancers, childhood cancers. We really need to stop messenger RNA. I could go into a lot of detail about this, but it's imperative. Avoid these shots.
If you look at the Amish community, Judith, there's the Amish community. If you take a look at the Amish community, you can see the contrast between our society and a society that doesn't vaccinate. And the Amish community will tell you that they don't have any instances of autism, with the exception of those children who were adopted into the community after they had already been vaccinated in our society.
Over and over again, and they ignore it. I've seen healthy, beautiful kids, as they'd be like 3 years old, and they get a shot, and then they stop talking. They're pooping their pants again, and they can't do eye contact, and some of them never recover from that, and they're definitely on the autistic spectrum. It's absolutely heartbreaking to see it, and it's our country that's suffering the most. We need to give more shots than anywhere else. Big Pharma needs to be, I hope I don't get cut off again, but needs to be decimated. It needs, these Big Pharma, they go and pick up any little company they see that maybe will have a way, a method that might be able to handle cancer. We can't have that, so they get rid of them by gobbling up.
Yeah. We've seen that throughout history. We've seen that when they were like, we got an engine that runs on water, and then the guy ends up dead. Yep. look at what they did to Tesla. Drove him crazy.
What Biden did to Tesla, I could not believe it. By the way, you're going to hear all this nonsense about, the lithium is causing so many problems.
I'm talking about Nikola Tesla, the namesake of the company.
The real Tesla got ruined,
Yeah, I mean, imagine all of the people that were like in the industrial age that wouldn't have made all that money from running copper across the country, and they were afraid. And then J.P. Morgan bankrolled his project, and then when he saw the level to which Tesla was building this thing and how he could have powered the entire country for free, he yanked the funding out from underneath him. Yeah, I mean, it was. Then they hid the patents. They hid the patents and took all the patents and all of his designs, and still have never released.
They also did something. Is Tesla, for aging the way he did? He looks horrible. I mean, I'm 81. I suppose if I had been subjected to the misery that Tesla had been, we don't know all the things they did, but like arsenic poisoning looks like, honestly, that he got a good dose of that. Just look at his pallor and the condition of his skin and everything when he was ready to die. Oh God. You know, you don't have to look horrible. I'm just saying that we have ways now to slow down, as you know, degeneration of DNA, everything. I've had to take good care of myself because I was actually, but this way, subjected to a lot more radiation than it should have been, because back then we weren't as careful as we are now. And one time I worked with one X-ray machine that had been improperly calibrated, and it burned my hands and it killed all my mice. So you can imagine. I was 16 when that happened, 16 and a half. That was a terrible time. So, and then another time when I was at a lab being trained, I accidentally swallowed a whole mouthful of his cancer cells. That's not fun. So I had to, be extra careful with supplements. And I really feel for people who do get cancer and so on.
I've done some work at, NS Tech and places like that in my life where I went through the radiological certifications, what they call GERT cert. Yep. I have my GERT cert, for those of you who know what that is. And they're, I'm not telling you that I know government secrets, but there were things that we were told, we couldn't talk about and that kind of stuff. And I can tell you some of the conversations that we heard inside of that building, because they take your cell phone from you. They take everything from you at the gate when you walk into these nuclear facilities. You can't. And some of the conversations that I heard going on with those white coats in some of the other rooms as we were just going down the hallway, it just made you want to slow down and like, what did he say? and you were told, hey, keep going, walk, go. What are you doing? Don't stand around. What are you doing? Wild stuff. And don't forget the place I'm at. I mean, I'm near S4, Area 51, Room Lake, Dreamland, whatever other nickname you want to give it. And Bob Lazar, George Natland blew the lid off of that. And there's some, and it's still to this day, I can tell you stories of things that I have seen in the skies out here. Well,
what they do? They add a lot of fake stuff, so you cannot sift out what's true from what's false.
Right.
That disgraces, discredits, and degrades the information we have, so we cannot discern. That's why living witnesses are important, as long as they're able to stay alive, I might add.
And that's in every facet of information. I'm not a Q believer. I'm not one of those guys that believe in the QAnon thing, but I believe there's so much element of truth in Q that the CIA or whatever intelligence agency's gotten a hold of, and they weaved all kind of just lies within it, so that when you cite something within the Q theory that may be true, you're attached to the rest of the lies, and now you sound crazy. So there's that, and they're very good at that. Look, we've flipped entire countries against their own governments. We chased the Shah out of Iran for 20 years. We are very, very good at overthrowing countries and installing puppet leaders and running psyops. And now it just happens to be we're running them on our own people.
Yeah, if we're looking at an installed president, all right, who totally incompetent, obviously a puppet, and you can even see a line along his neckline in the Halloween thing. You can see the line there that he's wearing a mask. I don't know.
Oh, flesh mask. Yeah. People really don't understand how true that is. There was a CIA operative that briefed George Bush while he was in the White House wearing a flesh mask, and he literally believed he was talking to the person that was supposed to be briefing him. And he wasn't told until after
this moment.
They weren't talking to the actual folks. There you go.
Excuse me, this is Denver Haslam. I'm going to be doing a nice interview with him at this evening at 8:00. So I have to answer it. It'll just take a minute.
Go ahead. And I'll bring you back up. So what we're guys, just keep in mind, our government is anything but stupid. They are very good at presenting information to us in such a way as to elicit a specific emotion, right? They put the information together. They have think tanks. They have people who are trained. They own the media, completely own the media. And so the information that we're given little snippets and little bite-sized pieces of truth mixed in with a bunch of propaganda. And, and then they feed us the lines that, well, we have a free press and we are, we're not like Russia. We're not like some Middle Eastern countries. That is so false. It's false. And we can show instance after instance of, that being false. Our media is, imagine if the media truly was free and we had true journalists today. We would not be as uneducated on a lot of these topics that we are, because for a lot of the things that I believe we have, like 9,000 people right now. We have 9,000 people watching, and I'm sure more than half, probably more than 3/4 of those people know for a fact many more things than their mainstream media reports to them. I guarantee it. But yet you have to be asking yourself, why is it that the mainstream media, when they get a tagline, that it doesn't matter if you're watching your local news or some national news coverage or whoever, all of the reporters, every single reporter is saying the same catchphrase at the same time, the same way. That is not by mistake. They're programmed, they're told what to do, and they're told what to do by people in high places to paint a picture, to hypnotize us, to brainwash us into. We can talk about things, Judyth, all day long till we're blue in the face and tell people facts, but they will not believe them until they hear those same exact facts from Fox News or CNN or wherever your news of choice is. We can tell you things that we absolutely know for certain, and it just won't hit home for a lot of people. It just won't be real until they hear it on the mainstream media. I was sitting with someone the other day at a restaurant. Kid you not. We were out watching the Ravens game. Big Ravens fan. And we were talking about the White Calf family crest, the otherwise known as the Redskins logo, being placed back on the football accoutrement, on the helmets. They're going to put the logo back in circulation. This is a fact. And the person was like, no, that's not true. And I said, well, what do you mean it's not true? I happen to know this for certain. We're involved with the Native American Guardians Association. We've seen the interviews. We saw what the governor said. We know about the negotiations with the team. And it's very easy. Here it is. I can show it to you. It's right here. He goes, I didn't hear it on the news, so I don't believe anything that thing says. I'm just blown away. I'm like, hold up. I'm showing you an actual meeting with the political figureheads and the football team, and them talking about the agreements that they made and what they're planning to do. And you're hearing it straight from the horse's mouth, but because you're not hearing it from CNN or Fox or some other news outlet, you're not going to accept it as fact. That makes absolutely no sense. This is how brainwashed some folks are. And you can tell who they are because they're still walking around with cloth masks on today, driving in cars all by themselves. No one in the car but them, or walking around open air in a park with a mask on. I like to say that if they said the only protection against catching any virus or disease was you wearing a purple shirt, these people would all be walking around and looking like Barney. They would just be full purple, top to bottom, because they would truly believe that the color protect, because that's what the media said. That's what the media said. And then they flip phrases that people like Trump used about the bleach thing, which was not It was satire. It was not literal. He wasn't actually telling people to do that, but that was the story the news ran with. And our friend over at OMG, James O'Keefe, who sat down when he was back at Project Veritas and proved that CNN knew they were lying when they talked about the Russian influence, the collusion with Trump, that it wasn't true. They knew it wasn't true, but it was good for ratings. And they didn't want Trump to win the White House. They were intentionally running false stories. And yet they still have an FCC license. This is tragic, and this needs to be fixed. That's why I was talking about the James O'Keefe's expose on when he sat down with the CNN technical producer and got him to admit that they knew they were printing false stories. They were running false stories about the Russia collusion stuff, that they knew it was false, but it was good ratings, and they didn't want Trump to get elected. So they're admitting to election interference, and this is all due to their messiah, Obama, on the left, that got rid of the Smith-Mundt Act, and now news organizations can say whatever they want, unless they're Alex Jones, and not get attacked for it. If you're Alex Jones, you can't get anything wrong. You can't be wrong. You have to be 100% right. You're going to get sued. You know, I always thought that the Trump administration should have sued CNN until it was out of existence. They had the evidence to do it. It was put out there for any. We can go on X right now and get the evidence. It is that easy to prove that what they did was wrong, and they knew it. In the old days, would have had the FCC license taken away, but they're still in news. They're still doing what they do, and I hope to God somebody buys MSNBC and fixes it. We get a news organization that's not a puppet for the deep state. But back to Congress.
Erased constantly. I've had interviews. I was trying to warn people that we were having a pandemic. Excuse me. Every time the air turns on, I get a bunch of dust. Anyway, oh shoot. To make a long story short, we have so much censorship still going on. I can't get through an interview. Now, get this. I can be online for hours and hours listening to somebody. And maybe I can say a few words, but if I talk very long, bingo, I don't care where I am, I get knocked off. It's very frustrating.
It seems to be timed. It seems to be in intervals that are almost exact. Just so you know. Yeah, I was looking at the difference between the time for when you went off until the time you went off again, and it seems to be about 9 minutes or so. So it looks like it's exactly the same amount of time between each one. So back to JFK, we talked about Lyndon's mistress and what she had to say.
Yes, Madeline Brown, she had a great deal to say about Lyndon. Of course, she was, I'll put it this way, she loved LBJ, and he was very proud of who he was and what he could do, physically and so on. Even bragged that he had more mistresses than JFK did, and so on. I mean, on and on. But it's the other things that he did that are of concern to me. For example, on the 22nd, people probably know this already, but Lyndon Johnson was going to be indicted and probably would have gone to prison because of given on the 22nd, the very same day Kennedy was shot. Lyndon had the option to either cop out, and stop this from happening and go to prison, or to go along with it and become president. We've got plenty of proof of that.
Well, that's kind of the way they operate, right? So Ray Epps, the famous antagonizer on J6, had a federal case brought against him. Not a federal case, a case where, and this is uncorroborated, but I did hear this from a news source that came from the Gateway Pundit, and they said that he was charged with a molestation of his own daughter. And then all of a sudden he was back on the street again, and he was there in Washington, D.C., telling people to go inside of the Capitol. And he's on film doing it several times. And he was the only one ever charged. He was on the wanted list, and then all of a sudden he disappeared. And it took a year of people pushing, like, this is the main guy. Why aren't you indicting him? This is nuts. You're arresting grandmas. You're arresting all these other people who did nothing. And yet the guy who you actually see doing something, you won't indict. And then when they finally did, it was a misdemeanor, and he never did a day in jail. And this is indicative of our government.
Going
and this
on
is why
Cesar Chavez, you may remember, there was a big demonstration in Austin, Texas. My little girl was still in a baby carriage, and I was active demonstrating for civil rights for Chavez, and his people. And all of a sudden, these people came in, literally from nowhere, like they just came through shops and everything, started breaking windows with bricks they happened to have somehow. And then
just like every time here, they show up on pallets.
They started beating people, and I got out of there quick because of my baby, and went down the side. I saw them arrest these people. The police arrested several of these guys that were in the process, I should say, of breaking windows and things. So I went quickly to one side, went down several side streets, and get away from it all. And there I saw that same police car stop and let them out. Then I realized how corrupt. Yes, I mean I will swear on a stack of Bibles on that.
That's nuts. But it doesn't surprise me.
Way back then, so you can imagine.
It doesn't surprise me.
I've tried to warn people. It's so important about COVID coming up. I could see what was going to happen years before it happened. And they removed all that, erased all that. And of course, then they maligned me. I had my life threatened. When I was first filmed by the History Channel, it was only shown 5 times. And then the LBJ family had a hissy fit over it.
It wasn't until we were talking yesterday that when we were talking and some of the things you were saying was igniting a memory, because I'm online all the time. I'm like I'm researching, I'm watching. It's why I can go down so many rabbit holes. But I remember as you were talking to me, I'm like, aren't you the one that did the interview about a decade before the COVID came out, telling us that they were getting ready to do compulsory vaccinations and all? And then you're the same one that was talking about those things long before they ever occurred. And you got the hell out of it.
I've got a lot more to say about that, especially about AI and the courageous stance that Elon Musk has been taking. Honestly, we've got to pray for him and for his safety, because the AI they're creating right now is taught to lie. It's taught to be politically active. To the point, as you know, where it presented with what about Caitlyn Jenner? If she's misgendered, is that more important that not happen than to avoid World War III? And the AI said it was more important that she didn't get misgendered. And
that to me, that whole situation with that particular topic is it's demonic. And it is a religion. The word Easter comes from the word Ishtar, and Ishtar was the goddess of gender fluidity. And if you remember back a year ago, the Bidens banned Christianity from the White House during the Easter egg hunt, and instead they lit the White House up like a rainbow.
That was just a mere coincidence,
They lit the White House up like a rainbow, and then they celebrated the Trans Day of Visibility. And then they had a topless trans party on the White House lawn. And not long after that, cocaine was found in the White House. And then he used taxpayer monies to give crack pipes to his constituents. This is the most embarrassing presidency ever. We have footage of the HHS director in the woods putting a spell on a rock. Have you seen this footage?
Well, we have this way. It's been going on for a long, long time. And interestingly enough, Alex Jones, looked at what was going on in the woods, in California.
Oh yeah,
And
I remember.
We've had satanic rituals going on a long time. Now, I have a book called David Ferry, Mafia Pilot, and it talks about the wandering bishops and the way CIA infiltrated and created fake religions and everything to round up. Yes, because they can be used, because if you can't get them one way, get them another way through religion. And then make all religion look bad, all of it, so that you can go and say, look, people who cite religion's values for what they don't have values, they don't count. Religion has to stay completely out of politics. Well, that's
I have those arguments with people all the time, and it's very easy to say that religion has caused more war and death and blah, and it's actually not true. Secularism has done an equal amount of damage in our world, and if you at all apply the tenets of what's taught in our Bible to those religious practices that did engage in those wars and those activities, you will see that they weren't being very Christian as they did it. If you actually listen to the words of Jesus, Jesus said, "You'll know them by their fruits." So you will see them for what they do, and that's how you can tell if they're Christian or if they're not. It's not because they belong to a church or they enter into a building or they engage in a ceremony, or even if they had said a prayer at one point in their life. It's much more than that. But
we understand that we've got to get people who are being raised without any kind of God at all. And you know what that leads to? When you have no God, you have no reason to be good. What you
moral relativism,
because you're an animal then. Take advantage of everything because you only eat, drink, and be merry, and then you die. It's right there in Solomon's, Ecclesiastes.
If you take a look at the Church of Satan, the Satanic Church, Anton LaVey, and what he espoused, you will find out very quickly what the Satanic Church preaches isn't that they pray to Satan and do things like that. People would think that's what it is. But in fact, all it is a lesson on selfishness. And it's like that term that the kids used a few years back called YOLO. You only live once. So basically do anything you want to do, anything that brings you pleasure. It doesn't matter who else it hurts as long as it helps you. The opposite of love is not hate, folks. It's selfishness. This is the reason that kids today are groomed into selfishness. This is why they don't care about the legacy of their namesake, of their family. They don't care about making their mom and dad proud. They're more inept to unplug your oxygen machine to charge their cell phones than they are to care about how mom and dad are proud of them.
When they're taught right in school, stories like the open boat or a good man is hard to find, and all these where actually acting selfish saves your life compared to others. And you're taught to not have any morals and get rid of the 10 Commandments. The 10 Commandments have been patented and they've worked for millennia. I mean, it's amazing how succinct and how important those commandments are. And they should be in every classroom because of their value.
I'm glad to see that the Oklahoma school district had brought God back into the picture. The first
Oklahoma has really done some really things. They're almost a model for the nation in some of the actions they've taken.
Yeah, and I hope that it catches fire. I hope that it goes throughout our country. Back to the JFK assassination, where we left off after Madeline Brain, we were talking about. We were going to get into now. We had laid the groundwork to what was about to occur. You're talking about Lyndon B. Johnson avoiding an indictment or prison time.
Oh, there's so much to say. And some of you people have maybe already heard it. So let's look at the cavalcade. I love to look at the motorcade because we have Lyndon Johnson having a fight with Kennedy so loud that Jackie Kennedy overheard it. So did others because he wanted Ralph Yarborough to sit in Kennedy's limo with him, Now, that's not what Kennedy wanted. He wanted Connally, the governor, who was a lot more popular, and to sit with him, And Kennedy got his way. I don't think Connally ever forgave LBJ for that. To the end of his life, when he was hit, he insisted it was a separate bullet. He was correct. The magic bullet is more than magic.
The one that wasn't scarred, the one that looked like it was never fired. Yeah.
Yeah, well, the original bullet that was found, by the way, on the gurney that was supposed to be Jack Ruby's was actually belonged to a 16-month-old kid named Ronnie. Okay, it wasn't even put on the right gurney. That bullet originally was pointed. It wasn't even round. I mean, we have the chain of custody is all messed up and so on. Nobody seemed to care. It didn't matter because the press is going to say whatever they want. So you have the police saying, look at who was former chief of police. Former chief of police is Earl Cabell, who is now the mayor, who we now know from 2017 files that were released was CIA, right along with his brother, General Charles Cabell, who was fired by Kennedy, who was number 2 in the CIA, as if generals and CIA should be the same people. That should never happen anyway, all right?
And they also shouldn't be operating on U.S. soil.
That's right.
But we know that they do.
Yeah. So what we have there is this outrage. We have Kennedy is in a black car, a blue-black car. The car behind him is black. All right. These are supplied. All the motorcade except for the limo that Kennedy's in are supplied by Dallas, by a dealership, a car dealership. And they select the cars. So we, at most motorcades, as you know, they're black cars. We have only one car in front of Kennedy. The average motorcade for a sitting president has 5 or 6 cars in front of it. That is protection, as you know. You're supposed to have all kinds of protection. There's only one car. And by the way, it speeds up as they're into Dealey Plaza. You can't see in the Zapruder film any car in front of Kennedy's car because it sped up so fast. They knew something. And you have officials from Dallas are in that car. Now, what's next? Kennedy's car, only one car. And the police are way, way ahead. And the other police are just at the wheels. They're told not to go forward because
and then the Secret Service let go of the car, right? At one point, the Secret Service are running along and they're holding onto the car. And then they turn the corner. They just let go and they just let it go by itself. Telling you folks, that is timed. That is a wild thing that happens when it does. Each time we get to a crux of the story, I'm going to go to another break real quick, guys, and we will come back right after these messages. We're going to be talking about shooting. We're going to get to the nitty-gritty, guys. We'll see you soon, right after these
Introducing the Trump token, America's cryptocurrency, a digital revolution to make America great again. Built on the high-performance Solana blockchain, the Trump token merges the economic principles of Bitcoin with the speed, scalability, and efficiency of modern technology. Designed to empower politically engaged communities, the Trump token taps into 3 major demand ecosystems: the Trump community, global cryptocurrency enthusiasts, and the internationally recognized Trump brand. In a world of financial uncertainty, the Trump token stands as a scarce and durable digital asset, positioned for growth within a rapidly expanding global market. Powered by Solana, the Trump token offers lightning-fast transactions, unparalleled scalability, and robust security, making it the ideal currency for both everyday use and political engagement. With a total supply capped at 21 million Trump tokens, 10 million are available for pre-sale at just $10 per token. In a powerful show of support, 50% of all pre-sale proceeds will be donated to Donald J. Trump's 2024 presidential campaign via super PACs. That's right, up to $50 million of crypto in kind will be donated to ensure Trump wins. On top of the donation, 40% free additional Trump tokens will be distributed over 36 months to all pre-sale participants who hold. Check out our official white paper for more. Driven by a decentralized governance model, the Trump token empowers its community to shape its future, ensuring the token remains aligned with the values of its supporters. Together, let's make America great again. Go to thetrumptoken.com to get involved. The Trump token. Own America's cryptocurrency now.
So guys, still getting back in, and there's time for one more break, and we're going to try to get to the heart of the story after this. We'll be right back.
Have you noticed the ever-alarming 400,000 cell towers that have gone up in the United States alone? How about the electronics that reside in every room of our homes and Wi-Fi that runs 24/7? 5G cell phones are carried in our pockets hours on end. Common complaints are ringing in the ear: sleep deprivation, palpitations, headaches, memory loss, and so much more. Redemption Shield is on the cutting edge of offering products that protect your family from electromagnetic and microwave radiation. From Faraday bags, earthing bed sheets, Wi-Fi router covers, hats, scarves, bed sanctuaries, this will not be going away anytime soon. We will continue to see only faster speeds, 6G, 7G, and more exposure to EMF than any time in our history. Start protecting yourself now. Go to redemptionshield.com and get grounded and shielded today. Use code PATRIOT and save 10%.
So we're still waiting for her to get back in here, guys. It may take a minute, and we'll go to one more break. And I'm hoping at the end of this break, she'll be back in here, because I'm left on a cliffhanger just like you, and I can't wait to get to the rest of this story. We will be right back after this message. Wrong messages.
Born in the coastal plains of South Texas, Smoking Gun Coffee is founded by combat veterans that know exactly what a cup of coffee needs to taste like. Run by father and son, each coffee bean is perfected, roasted at 500 degrees, and cooled with a Gulf Coast breeze. Smoking Gun Coffee hand makes and bags each ounce of coffee for maximum customer satisfaction. With every purchase, 10% goes back to organizations that help veterans and local communities. That's Texas made, one bag at a time. To find out more, go to www.smokingguncoffee.com.
So, I don't know what's going on. We got some technical difficulties, obviously, on her end. So, just like you, like I said, we're left on the cliffhanger, and I'm sure she's going to get right back in here. We're going to cut to one more commercial, and I'm going to give her a call during this break. Hopefully we can get her back in, because we're just getting to the heart of this.
This marks the potential start of a third world war, where we will be hit with a silent, untraceable attack on America that unfortunately very few will see coming. This attack will be unlike any we have seen before, the one that directly targets our power grid, which will cause a nationwide blackout and plunge our great nation into darkness, despair, and starvation. I know some patriots have been preparing for this eventuality, but stockpiling and growing your own food is simply not enough, because this marks just the first phase of this orchestrated attack on America. And with Sleepy Joe and his team of incompetents at the helm, people will soon realize no one is coming to save them. Then it will be every man for himself. The looting will begin. Supermarkets will be ransacked. Local gangs and marauders will target anyone who looks like easy pickings. And by the end of the first week, millions of unprepared, desperate, and hungry Americans will be eating from garbage cans, if they're lucky. And that's exactly what our enemies want, to destroy our great nation from the inside. But the reality is, you do not have to be a victim. There is something you can do to prepare. Hi, my name is Teddy Daniels. I am a United States war hero, a White House insider, and a Purple Heart recipient. And I just released an emergency broadcast that reveals the one thing you must do in the first hour of the attack. That will guarantee you will have a power supply for you and your family. These 3 secrets will give you peace of mind and unlimited power during this critical time. By seeing this right now makes you one of the lucky ones. Because when the attack happens, most Americans will have no idea what hit them, but not you. You'll be in complete control, and that puts a lot of power in your hands. Yes, others may laugh when they see you quietly preparing for this imminent attack, but once our power grid fails, those woke millennials won't be laughing anymore. They will be wishing they had prepared, while you and your family prosper and thrive. But you need to move fast. I have it on good authority This attack could start as soon as next week. So I urge any American or true patriot to watch my emergency broadcast right now before it gets taken down again by the powers that be to protect their controlling interests. Watch it now while you still can, like your life depends on it, because it does.
As we age, we lose a bit of energy. Of course, that's not our fault. Our bodies change as we grow. Healing patches rejuvenate your cells and in the skin play a key role in the aging process. Research has found that as we age, the number and function of these cells decline, which can lead to a decrease in skin elasticity and the development of wrinkles. But what if there was a product that could restore that spunk for more than just our skin? There is, and it does. The product draws out other huge benefits such as more energy, better sleep, reduced stress, and pain management. If you would like more information, please go to miraclehealingtherapy.com. That's miraclehealingtherapy.com. Here's that website address once again, miraclehealingtherapy.com.
Have you noticed the ever-alarming 400,000 cell towers that have gone up in the United States alone? How about the electronics that reside in every room of our homes and Wi-Fi that runs 24/7? 5G cell phones are carried in our pockets hours on end. Common complaints are ringing in the ear: sleep deprivation, palpitations, headaches, memory loss, and so much more. Redemption Shield is on the cutting edge of offering products that protect your family from electromagnetic and microwave radiation. From Faraday bags, earthing bed sheets, Wi-Fi router covers, hats, scarves, bed sanctuaries. This will not be going away anytime soon. We will continue to see only faster speeds, 6G, 7G, and more exposure to EMF than any time in our history. Start protecting yourself now. Go to redemptionshield.com and get grounded and shielded today. Use code PATRIOT and save 10%.
So guys, while she's rebooting, which is what's going on, she's got to reboot the computer and log back in. Let's talk a bit about what's getting ready to go down with us over here at PPN on February the 19th through the 21st. We will be reporting live, broadcasting live from CPAC. This is going to be an amazing time, and we're looking forward to it. We're looking very forward to this. There's a lot of people that I want to talk to. And so Maurice, Steve, myself, and Nate Kane will be there in Washington, D.C., February 19th through the 21st. Mark your calendars. We will be streaming live from CPAC. Now, there's a lot there. There's a lot that's going on right now with Nancy Mace, who I reached out to her office for an interview, still awaiting reply on that. Would love to talk to her. I think what she's doing is fabulous. The fact that she's standing up against the woke mob and defending women, real women. And we need more like that. And I mean, and you know, now she's up against the ACLU, who have completely lost their way. Completely lost their way. They used to stand up for women's rights. They used to stand up for free speech. But now, not so much. Now they are, have you seen the interview where they're trying to, they have the, I apologize for this and I should silence that. The transgender individual during the interview that is talking about children as young as 2 knowing that they're transgender. This is no different than the HHS director arguing in open session about having people allowed to have children, young children, have gender affirming surgeries. I mean, folks, I never thought in a million years that our country's morality and value system would fall to a low, to this level of a low. And we know that the end game is depopulation, and they're going about it in any way they possibly can. We saw Bill Gates backpedal on everything that he said about, I mean, the COVID vaccine and its effectiveness, and he played a major role. And we just saw him get chased to his car, and I believe it was in Britain, and people were yelling, "Arrest him!" And then you go all the way back to his TED talk that he gave, where he's talking about lowering the world's population by 10 to 15% with the use of vaccines. And then fast forward to the meeting he had with Donald Trump in the White House in December, where Trump was talking about telling him that they were going to investigate the effectiveness of these vaccines. And Bill Gates told him, that's a dead end, don't do that. And that was Trump talking about putting Robert Kennedy in charge of going after those people. So, and then, fast forward from that to Bill Gates saying that we could have never seen, it was a big chaotic debacle and it didn't prevent the transmission and we couldn't have foreseen this, and in his interview. So it's not me telling you these things. I'm telling you exactly what the reports were, what he said, and what the timeline was. And it's sad to think that we live in a world where people have access to so much information. Everything I just said to you is true. It's on the record. You can go look up those interviews for yourself. You can go look up everything that he has said. Yet, repeating this on certain social platforms, even though I'm quoting, is taboo. They, for some reason or another, don't want this information to get out. They don't want us repeating it. They don't want us talking about the damage that was done. They don't want us talking about the ineffectiveness. When Peter McCullough came out and said that when they were talking about the efficacy of those drugs, that they were mincing terms, meaning we were told in the beginning it was 95% effective. Well, no, it was 95% relative efficacy. And what relative efficacy is versus overall efficacy is that it's 95% better than the previous attempt. So it's only gauging its effectiveness against how well their previous version of the vaccine actually works, not how effective it is on humans against the actual virus. These types of trickery and these types of things that they love to do to confuse people. And then when we go about explaining to you the games they play and the tricks they pull, they don't like it. And they do everything that they can in order to prevent us from being able to tell you the truth. And that's why we push so hard here at the Patriots Prayer Network for people like Elena Barbera, Two Guys, One Coup, To The Point Podcast, of course, Cowboys and Indians, Nate Kane with the Raising Cane Show, or the show that him and I do in conjunction, which you'll see later today at 6 p.m. With the Woke Detox, or our good friend over in New Jersey during the Jersey Shore podcast, or Alexandra 360. There's one thing, there's a thread that runs through the center of all of that. And that's our shared value system. And each one of the people that you see on this network brings a different perspective than the other. But we all share the same values. We care about our country. We want to restore the moral compass in this country. And we are aligned with conservative values. Now, I can tell you for a fact that none of us, well, I can't say none of us because I had that conversation with everybody, but I'll speak for myself in this instance, but I don't play the two-party game, right? I don't buy into that. I am a conservative. I vote my values. I stand with people who espouse my values. I don't go into the back and forth between the two-party system to say I'm completely a Republican, because there are libertarians that I absolutely love. I think Ron Paul is a prime example of that. But the way that our election system works is to allow only a two-party system to function. That way, anyone who wants to actually run and have a chance at being on that debate stage, or to, get the press that is necessary, you get people like Donald Trump and Ron Paul and others throughout the years that have ran on the conservative ticket just so that they have a chance at winning. And thank God for that, because that's exactly what Donald Trump did. And he came out on top against all odds, because they tried every single thing that they can do to thwart his efforts to become president. And believe me, they still haven't stopped. It's not done. It's not over. Do you think that just because he won the presidency, that's where it stopped? Do you remember the 4 years of his presidency and how it was constant litigation, constant accusation, a barrage of attacks from every angle, anything they could do to try to slow him down? And what Biden did immediately upon taking office was spent the first week or so behind closed doors, just undoing all the Trump era policies. And that's when you have our country falling to pieces the way it has been over the last 4 years, whether it be the uptick in fentanyl poisoning that has occurred under the Biden administration, illegal immigration to the extent that we have seen it, the TDA gang, the Trinidad Aragua, that went into apartment buildings, throwing people out of their apartments. And then the left-wing media tried to play it down and said, that only happened once. Like, it needs to happen more than once. It needs to happen more than a handful of times. I think they use the word handful. It needs to happen more than a handful of times before it's an issue. No, it's an issue that a foreign gang, illegal immigrants, criminals, come over to our country with assault weapons and go into an apartment building and throw the tenants of that building out and take it over. Are you kidding me? That has to happen more than once before it's an issue? But that's who they are, folks. And all of this still leads back to what we're talking about when we're talking about even this JFK assassination. Because this is the media that covers for that. And I think more people now than ever in our society are waking up to the fact that we've been lied to, we've been misled, and our country is falling apart. And that's not by accident, it's by design. Leftism, Marxism, fascism, I'll coin a new term, wokeism, is a disease. We used to put communists in prison. We used to prosecute them because we understood that being a communist is being a seditionist. We knew that being a socialist was being a seditionist. Today, you have people like Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib and others, Hakeem Jeffries, Cory Booker, many others, that all belong to the Democratic Socialists of America. And yet they still hold office. And you might ask, how in the world could that happen? You have to look no further than Bill Clinton, who in '93 signed a bill into law that decriminalized being a communist and holding office. However, INA 212 still is alive and well. That means at our border, if they find out a person entering our country is a socialist or a communist, they are inadmissible to come into the country, receive citizenship, or any of that. And they damn sure can't come here and hold office. So this would expel folks like Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar from not only just being citizens, but they damn sure can't hold office. So I'm hoping that amongst all of the other laws and things that Donald Trump is resurrecting in order to right the wrongs that we've seen take place over the last several years, that he goes in and he restores American exceptionalism and puts back in place the fundamental laws and values of our country by making communism an illegal practice in the United States once again. That we see organizations like the DSA for what they are, seditionists. If we don't restore the values and the respect that we're supposed to have in this country, we'll never have a country, because we are using, under the guise of freedom, the ability to give, the right to go out and protest and enact policy to anarchists who are just taking freedom to some unheard of, fringe element that's just outside of the realm of what this country is supposed to be. Because your liberty, right, your freedom cannot take away someone else's. Meaning, for instance, the whole bathroom issue. Women have a restroom. Men have their restroom. There is a reason why our society, why the world, not just our society, the world is set up that way. And it needs to be restored. All of these people there you see going into places and going into restrooms, and you see they held a little sing-along the other day in the restroom to try to mock our values, to mock our ethics, and to say basically we're not going to stop them. Well, I'm telling you, no real man is going to stand by and do nothing and say nothing while their mother, sister, daughter, aunt, whatever the case is going to be put into a position to have to be in a private area meant for women and to freely allow men to go into those areas. It's not safe. There are many such instances where women were accosted. There's a young girl in Texas whose father was arrested just because he brought awareness to the situation, and that young transgender individual was moved to a different school, and then he did the same thing again. And then here the other side of the people that take their freedom too far and think they can say whatever and do whatever they want and lie in the process. Let's talk a bit about the Daniel Penny situation. I'm going to play a clip for you, and this is what the BLM activists in New York are saying. And then I'm going to give you my take on this, and what I'm telling you, I'm right. I'm right. Anyone who says Daniel Penny is a hero, you're not lying. He absolutely is a hero. And the fault of that situation lies squarely at the feet of the prosecutor's office, the DA's office. This man was arrested 40 times. 40 times he was allowed back on the street. He was on the train threatening the lives of individuals, both white and black. Not to mention that Daniel Penny did what he did with the assistance of other African-American men to protect the people on that train. But listen to what these BLM militants are saying. Listen.
I'm the co-founder of Black Lives Matter Greater New York. I stand here heartbroken because I have to hug a father who knows that the murderer of his son will most likely go free, who has to look in the face of a jury that no matter the facts, no matter the expert witnesses, no matter the people yelling on that train that day to let Jordan go, you will kill him. They will not find a white man guilty of killing a black man in modern day America. This is no different than Jim Crow. This looks like a picture out of the picture book when you look at that anonymous jury We have baby boomers who were there during Jim Crow on this jury. We have young people who are looking at Daniel Penny as a hero. And what America is a hero, a killer. He didn't give a crap about Jordan. The medical examiner said Jordan turned purple. Yes, black people can turn purple when they are denied oxygen. Every lab report showed he died of asphyxiation. And that doesn't matter because they want to spare a white man the penalty of his crimes. America has not changed, and I hate to say it, it may never change. And people who keep asking, are we going to riot? Are we going to protest? Is that what's needed? Do glass have to break? Do cars have to burn for a black man to get justice in America? We can't show up with peace. We can't show up with facts. We can't show up with evidence and witness after witness. You give us nothing. And then you ask us to love this country. America hates black people, and we see it from that jury pool.
A black man was lynched, and his name was Jordan Neely.
And that is complete bullshit. Because just like the video and the clip showed right there as they were talking, there are black men assisting Daniel Penny and what he was doing. And they also assisted in putting Jordan Neely into a recovery position after he did that. And they are completely excusing the fact that this Jordan Neely individual was threatening the lives of other people on that train. So are the lives of the people he was threatening less important? Why aren't they brought up in their statements? Because some of those were black too. There was a mixture of races on that train, folks. But these people, love to come out and put on these charades and act, virtue signal and act so appalled at things that happen. Because you know why? Because it gets them in the press. It gets them more donations so they can move out of their black neighborhoods and the white neighborhoods and buy mansions, which is what BLM has already done in the past. They've already done this. They've been caught misusing the funds that there are. And then there are other chapters of Black Lives Matter who now support the J6 political prisoners and support Donald Trump. So some of them are waking up, but this militant fringe element of people that look no further than race and consider no part of the rest of the entirety of the story and focus solely on the color of this man's skin to determine guilt or innocence. They're crazy, they're militant, and it's un-American. And when people make threats like that on the news, they should immediately be arrested, investigated, and those organizations should be broken up. We're not at a point in history where Jim Crow is a thing anymore. And when it was a thing, you had to look no further than the Democrat Party to place blame. And now we have these fringe elements that have grifted off of society, the Ben Crumps, the Al Sharptons. To do what, folks? Are they talking about unity? Are they talking about making things better? Are they trying to build a community, or are they focused simply on themselves to divide, to use the race card to excel above everyone else and look down on people and use that to hurt people, not help people? Where are they going into their communities to cause unity, to make things better, to heal? They're not. Not their intention. Their intention is to get attention. What they're doing is taken right out of the Saul Alinsky playbook, same way that Obama operated, rules for radicals. This is who they are. This is what they are. And this is another instance in which the press is complicit in making these people famous and putting a battery in the back of these militants to do whatever in the hell they please to do. Listen, folks, we want a world where our communities act like family, where we raise our kids with respect and to treat each other with human decency and kindness, and to stand up for other innocent people when evil inserts itself into the situation. And what they have done to Daniel Penny, I'm sure, is going to make people think twice before they intervene in a situation where an evil man is hurting an innocent person, because they will see that no matter what, right, wrong, or indifferent, that they will be tried based on the color of their skin. And in America, where they're saying that a white man can't be convicted for killing a black man, I think they're so mistaken. Look at Derek Chauvin. Coroner report was made public in a different trial, not even George Floyd's own trial, where the coroner had to come out and use that paperwork, that scenario, as evidence, so that now we understand, when it was made public, that George Floyd had 5.5 times the lethal amount of fentanyl in his system. So did Derek Chauvin actually murder him? Absolutely not. What Derek Chauvin did was heartless. I think that he, acted out of pride, and he stayed there, and he basically didn't want to let go of his authority, as people were telling him to get off of this man, that for whatever reason. You get no argument out of me with that at all. But here's the part of it that people don't see, and what the media didn't put any attention on, and they put people in danger and took a man's life away as a result. They didn't talk about the amount of fentanyl in this man's system. They didn't talk about the chewed up tablets of fentanyl they found in the back seat of the cop car. They didn't talk about the fact that the police officers first rolled the window down at George Floyd's request. They didn't talk about the fact that when George Floyd requested to get out of the cop car and lay down on the ground, that they allowed that to take place. He wanted to lay down on the ground. Now, my question is why in the world the ambulance took the amount of time it took to get there. There are other questions to be had, other things that they need to look at. But when you take a look at all of these things, including, let's go back to the Brittany Murphy trial, where in Kentucky, where was it Brittany Taylor? I said Brittany Murphy, Brittany Taylor, where the police had a no-knock warrant, and they enter the apartment, and her boyfriend starts shooting at the police. Well, the police returned fire. That's what they're supposed to do. And yet they were deified because somebody in a higher position gave them a no-knock warrant for an address to go look for somebody who was already in custody. Yeah, mistakes were made, but it wasn't in the police that were the foot soldiers that were doing what they were told, who were defending themselves and shooting back after they were being shot at. Or let's talk about the George Zimmerman case with forget the kid's name now. I forget the kid's name, that the one that happened in Florida, where he's walking through the community, and George Zimmerman is the neighborhood watch, and then he's accosted by this young man, and they put out a photo of him showing him as a 14-year-old boy, a little smaller, skinnier, and they just talked about him like he was a kid eating Skittles, drinking iced tea, and that was the end of it. Well, that turned out to be not true at all. Trayvon Martin, that was his name. And he beat George Floyd senseless. He fractured his skull. He broke his nose. George Zimmerman got off a shot and protected himself. The people need to remember that in this country, we're free people. We're free, and that freedom comes at a price. And if these people that consistently say how much they do not like the police keep taking power away from citizens, and to give and relinquish that power to a police department, to give them ultimate authority over everything that happens in the civilian world, we're no longer free. That's an authoritarian society. You have the ability to protect your community, your property, your home, your friends and family. People forget this is a gated community. He did not live there. There are other instances of him doing this same exact thing and going into people's garages and stealing. It was brought up in the trial. The girlfriend that was on the phone with him got caught lying on the stand. Jacob Blake. They made a big deal out of Jacob Blake getting shot in the back by the police officers and neglected to tell you that the kids in the back seat of the car, the reason why the police were called is because those kids were kidnapped. And then Jacob Blake reached in that car for a knife. But Biden went straight to his bedside, and started defending a man who kidnapped children. Or how about the incident in Tennessee, in Nashville, where, what's her name? Not her. I forget the name, but in any case, she went down there to race bait. She didn't go down there to bring any unity. She didn't go visit the families of the dead children or the teachers. She went down there to cause division, talking about Kamala, and that's what she did. She went into a session where she talked about the racial issues and that, but while she was there, she never visited the school. Why? Because they don't care about it. They care about power. That's what they care about. And we got you back.
Yeah, but I have an interview.
You're good. You're good. And we will do this again. But
they logged me out of X, and my password didn't work. I had to redo everything.
Well, we will do this again, but let's surmise real quick for everybody, because I don't want to end on that note. At the end of the day, we know the intelligence communities and many other characters were involved in this, and there's a lot more of the story that we all know. Lee Harvey Oswald was blamed, and we know that the story that they gave wasn't true. If you could give people a truth about this right now as to your reasoning, why this happened and who committed this crime, what would you say?
The CIA knew they were going to be disorganized and probably disbanded by JFK. And we have the same thing going on today. May have a complete upheaval of CIA, FBI. He hated JFK. And then you had the Cubans were upset because of Bay of Pigs, and the mafia upset because they were being attacked. I mean, so they all got together, and frankly, that hasn't stopped. We do have the Cubans have in America who have become true Americans and who have supported Trump and so on. Now, I'd like to say this. I have so much I had planned to say, and all the time got eaten up by disruptions. I don't know what to do about this. It happens. It doesn't happen if I can be online for hours and nothing happens as long as I'm not speaking. And then microphone problems happen. We've had computers ruined, literally fried under my hands and everything. There's so much I want to communicate, and I'm hoping that somehow we can get together and solve some of these interference problems I'm having, because I have a lot to tell you, and I'm still alive. Okay?
Well, I tell you this,
not by accident.
I have a way in which we can accomplish that. And I'll talk to you about it offline. And another way that we can do the interview where we're not dependent upon the computer and your current connection to do the interview and get video as well. So I was already thinking about that, but I didn't want to revert to that while we were on air. I just wanted to power through it. But I'll talk to you about that soon. So I know you got to go.
I'd like to say, please, guys, if you get the book, because my enemies, what they do is say, I refuse to read her book. They don't want to see the truth. The truth is there. I have never been sued. I name names you wouldn't believe. Doctors, hospitals, everything. And I won't be sued because I don't want to open that can of worms. Sure. So I hope people will look at the book. I'll just show it to everybody so that you'll understand. First of all, there's Me and Lee. That's by Train Day, but that's 10 years old. But it's a wonderful book if you can't you want paperback, and it has plenty of information in it, plenty. But the new one, and the only limited edition of this is so it can go into all kinds of like libraries and everything. It's hard copy. It is like 600 pages filled with all kinds of information. No matter where I turn, probably going to have, going to have a picture. It's going to have all kinds of information and color photos, everything. It's $40. And if you go to Judyth Vary Baker at gmail.com and to PayPal, I can autograph it. Or if you use an Amazon gift card to Judyth Vary Baker at gmail.com, I can autograph it. Or you can go ahead and get it from Amazon for the same price. Well, 5 cents less. So I'm hoping people will do that. The other book for people who really know a lot is this one, David Ferry. For people who are really into this, you have to be a researcher really to appreciate it, but it shows exactly how they lied about David Ferry. It'll show you how mafia, excuse me, of course they did it too, but the media, how they will change things. I'm a little flustered because of so many interruptions, so much I wanted to tell you. Never did get to tell you about my credentials and everything. I'm hoping I can return. I'm hoping we can work together. I love you guys. I'm telling you, without God's love, I wouldn't be alive. And I know that.
So we can definitely make that happen. We can do this anytime we want. So I'll reach out to you within the next day or so, and we will schedule another time and work on those technical issues and get the rest of the story told.
I love it. Technical issues. We've tried all kinds of computers. They've fried them all up, but this one is an older computer, and it seems that some of the things don't happen to it that have happened to newer computers for whatever reason. The other is I'm very grateful to be here tonight at supposedly between 7 and 8, somewhere in there. By 8 o'clock, I will be on X, and anyone who wants to go and follow me there, that's called Ask Judyth Anything. We hope it will be able to do better than what's happened here. We have no idea, because every time it's different. These challenges are different.
We have over 10,000 viewers.
God bless you all.
Yeah, so we did well, and regardless of whether or not we got through all the information, I think people get, and we will return with the rest of that information, because I'm a person that likes to. I'm a know.
Well, before we finish, my dear, ask a question. Ask me anything. This is the thing. I don't have to have any records in front of me or anything, but now I can't tell you. I wasn't in Dealey Plaza. I can't tell you exactly who shot. What I can do is, if you ask me anything about what occurred between Lee Oswald and me, or Lee himself, anytime up to the time of the assassination, and even somewhat beyond, I will answer.
Well, let me ask you this, because it's less about the pre-incident than the post. So you obviously, when you heard about the JFK assassination, what happened in your life?
I watched. I mean, we were watching at the laboratory that I was associated with. They put me in a NASA job, like they did others that were at Riley, went to NASA jobs, and they knew. They put chairs out and everything, watching for it to happen. It was really horrible.
So they knew it was going to occur before it occurred. Yeah. And you could tell by the way in which they were acting. They were actually, getting ready to see what evidently they had planned for. But
they never, only Christmas and 4th of July had off, and yet they started a volleyball game. They extended lunch and everything. It was amazing, because we're an hour later, than Texas was. Yeah.
What was that next 7 days like? So the day following, do you remember what that was like?
First of all, watching when I was praying that Lee would get out of it alive, because there was hope, And then they said, so here's what happened. So I cried when Kennedy was shot, and everybody else was cheering. It was horrible that way. But then when Lee was captured, I cried again. I couldn't help myself. And so my boss, Mr. Mays, a chemist, he said, "What is this? You cry when Kennedy's shot and then you cry when the shooter is captured?" He didn't understand what was going on. But of course, they gave me 30-day notice, I should say, that my job was terminated just for acting that way,
Right.
And there were tears also on my logbook, and it blurred some of the stuff that I tried to write over it. You're never supposed to change anything in the logbook. I didn't change anything. I made it clearer again because it was all blotted with my tears. But that gave them the excuse to fire me. Yeah. But
Well,
when I saw Lee shot before my eyes, I remember screaming, and I don't remember anything for like more than 2 days. I don't remember anything. I don't know how I got through it or anything.
That's how trauma works, and it's unfortunate. And I'm hoping that the next 4 years that is about to occur, starting in January.
He's got a terrible job. They're right now they're sabotaging everything they can. They're spending all the money they can so that he will, and they're making laws that won't expire until after Doge is finished, and all kinds of things. They're creating laws that exist.
They immediately got together, generals and other people that got together and started figuring out ways that they could thwart the incoming administration. So they're plotting against him immediately as soon as they heard he was elected. And
that's treason, sir. That's treason. People need to understand the concept.
The Jamie Raskin did an interview where he said that Congress was going to do the job that the Supreme Court of the United States wouldn't do, and that's invoke Article 3 of Section 3 of Article 14 of the Constitution.
There you go.
Which is the Sedition Act. And as if he said that the Supreme Court didn't rule on that, and that they were going to have to do what the Supreme Court wouldn't do and disqualify him and not affirm him as president. Now, this is what he just said on live TV no more than a month ago. So whether or not that's going to actually occur, who knows? But the moment that happens, that is the true treason and sedition. But whether or not they actually go through with it, the words that came out of his mouth should be enough to put him behind prison bars for quite some time. And it's terrible the way that we've seen this. I've never been able to see such a clear definition between right and wrong, good and evil, as I am today between these two factions. And
they're not hiding anything. We have bare breasts prancing around, these people prancing around on the White House lawn. It was so shameful. I mean, we lost our dignity, we lost our credibility, we lost our leadership as a world leader, you name it. And the man fell asleep at
and you definitely don't give somebody a blanket pardon for a decade unless you're protecting a career criminal and you're a co-conspirator.
Well, by the way, if you could do that and he extended it, to the end of the year for future things he might do until the end of the year, that means you can extend something forever and get people off the hook forever. This can't last. It's going to be rescinded. It has to be. You can't go past the date of the pardon itself. A pardon means also that they committed it. Pardons are only given if somebody has already committed a crime.
Exactly. And so it also means that they're still in the act of doing whatever said crime, and he feels as though they may be done by a certain date. So he's giving them a get out of jail free card. And
you can't pardon somebody for something you haven't done yet. So I mean that's illegal. Absolutely illegal. It won't stand. It won't stand a chance.
All the rhetoric from the left that said nobody is above the law, never want to hear them. I never want to hear them say that ever again, because these are the same people that were yelling, "My body, my choice," and then said, "You must get vaccinated."
Yeah. And they're forcing, I looked at this little girl, she's going to school. They're forcing her to take a flu vaccine or she's kicked out of school and won't be able to get her scholarships to go on and become a nurse and all that. the school is taking over the position of owning the child over the parents' rights. This is something that happens in communism. It's not supposed to happen in a free country.
Yeah, but we've been asleep at the wheel as a people. And
not all of us, but we have been taken away from the wheel.
But as a people, as a whole, we need to take more responsibility for our communities. We need to figure out who our county supervisors are, who's on our city council, who's on our school board. And we as regular people need to start running for those positions and make sure our values and our American way of life are protected. Because
my friend, have you ever been to you go, have you ever been to a precinct meeting, where ahead of time, it's already been sealed and delivered. I mean, you're just, all you can do is vote for what they've already decided. So people don't know how to make an impression, because when they go and go to any of these meetings, they find out that everything's already set in stone. So they feel helpless.
And I actually have, and we had more time, I have actual recordings here, audio recordings from the school district in Utah of them thinking the mics weren't on, discussing that very thing. People
get helpless also. They've been in this system. We're talking about so many adults now that were trained only to believe everything they're told and only learn what the teachers tell them and not to think for themselves. They stop inquiring. They accept information from authority. Of course, that happened to me as a teenager. I believe what they were telling me when I was ordered to make cancer more deadly. It's in newspaper articles. They gave me the excuse. I wasn't being trained to make cancer more deadly. I was only doing that so we could find out how to cure cancer. It was all a lie, and it wasn't true. I was sucked in, and I trusted my superiors. They weren't superior in morals, however.
Well, thank you so much for the time that we spent today. And I know we're going to be working together in the future. We're not going anywhere. So
I need you guys. I really do, because this has been 24 years of fighting all the way like this, just fighting as fast as we do interviews, they erase them from YouTube and everything. Yeah.
And so, and just look forward to those of you who don't know, the Patriots Prayer Network will be broadcasting live from CPAC. So they gave us they screwed up and gave us a spot. So we're going to be there. We're going to be there, and we're all looking forward to it. So Nate K, myself, Maurice, aka the Native Patriot, and Steve from the Cowboys and Indians podcast, and Nate and myself from the Woke Detox, guys, we look forward to it. We thank you so much, Judyth, for taking the time, and we will be getting over those little hurdles that we had today. Don't worry about that. We got ways. So, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. All 10,000 of you. We several thousand on Rumble as well as on X. And guys, we love you and we thank you so much for your support. We wouldn't be able to do this without you. And as usual, the silent majority, you need to stop being silent, stand your ground. Evil will never retreat willingly. It must be beaten back. You guys have a great night, and we'll see you.
Never give up. Just never give up,
That's right. We'll see you at 6 p.m. for the Woke Detox, guys. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
This is the Patriots Prayer Podcast. It's a tremendous show, one of the greatest shows in the history of the world.
This is Bryson Gray, and you are watching the Patriots Prayer.
Soon on the Patriots Prayer Network. Thank you all.
America's falling, they all say. Gather the faithful now and pray. The Patriots Prayer. The Patriots Prayer. All the wicks are trimmed, oil is filled to the brim. together.